What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How are y'all doing tonight? I am doing decent. No, I'm doing great. I'm excited to have this conversation with these fine gentlemen. I'm your co-host, Tyler Fowler. With me is my other co-host, my brother from another mother, the legend, the man, the myth, all of those things, David Russell. What is going on, my friend? How are you tonight? And are you excited to do our big finale of our creation and science series?
Oh yeah, man, this is great, man. I'm just glad everything came together the way it did. It was like we had this planned, right? Like we had this idea for like a month, and then like I couldn't find somebody, and then Jordan's trying to help me and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm really excited that it came together. I'm really excited to be here. We got the new shirts out, folks. The Faith Unaltered shirts. We even got little logos on the back and stuff. It's pretty cool. So I'm excited about that. It's gonna make it a lot easier for people to like actually find us on Facebook and stuff like that. So I'm pretty excited about that. So, yep, you'll be getting yours soon. I'm sending you one. These are like the trial shirts. See if we like them. See, stuff like that. I already like it, so I think that's probably what we're gonna go with
for our merch. Right,
and then you're gonna probably like it too, and you're gonna want to go with it as well. But
I mean, I already like the picture of it, bro. Like the pictures you sent me are great. I can't wait to get it, try it on.
Yeah. So, but anyways, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited about our guest. We've got Dr. Joseph Miller back with us, my friend from Reason to Doubt, Jordan Karim, who we've met before because we actually both live in the same state. So we've actually been able to debate each other face to face.
Nice.
And that was fun. And except for the first time, that wasn't fun. I got Jordan just like rolled over me. Yeah, Jordan rolled over me pretty well. Oh man, but yeah, that was wild time. But yeah, we ended up having a good conversation, and we got to meet each other, and he's got a podcast called Reasons to Doubt. So anybody that watched PRA, you've seen Jordan plenty of times. So I'm excited to have him here, Rich and Mr. Hoesch, Professor Hoesch. So that's really cool. So Tyler,
I'm excited. So for those who is familiar with Porridge, Jordan, if I'm not mistaken, you actually co-hosted on David's special guest host month about the main reasons that I think it was like kind of a topsy-turvy kind of thing where you guys had actually given your best or the best arguments in your opinion for the existence of God, right? And so go ahead.
Yep, we Jared and I, who's my co-host, we thought it might be fun if we kind of batted for the other team, so to speak. So we argued for God, and the Christians argued against it. It was a good time.
It was really, really fun. And so my friend is back with us. So for those who are familiar with Faith Unaltered, the Faithiest Atheist Richard Suttles is guest co-hosting. So what had happened was we didn't know if David was going to join us tonight or not. And about a week ago, he actually confirmed that he was going to be here, but I had already asked Richard to guest co-host with me. I said, we're not going to kick you out, brother. Come voice your opinion on this subject. And so, Richard, we are happy to have you here. Is there anything you'd like to say before we get started, bro?
No, I'm just happy to be here.
Right on. We are happy to have you here. So, like David already introduced, representing the Young Earth view tonight is Professor Bill Hoesch. He's from Mount St. Helens Creation Center. And correct me if I'm wrong, Professor Hoesch, you are the director of the Mount St. Helens Creation Center. Go ahead and give us a little intro about yourself and about the Mount St. Helens Creation Center, if you would.
Sure. My name is Bill Hoesch. Nice to meet you, gentlemen. And the Mount St. Helens Creation Center is a little watering hole along the I-5 freeway, and we're striking distance to Mount St. Helens. And we have a visitor center there. People come from all walks of life, stop in and ask directions. Other people are Christians. They want to be encouraged in their faith. And the thing that Mount St. Helens does for us is it gives me a window into thinking about Earth history. Mm-hmm. It doesn't prove anything, but it shows that large canyons, layered rock, abundance of isotope daughter products, and a host of other features about that volcano tell me that it's possible to misread Earth history in terms of vast ages when vast ages are not there. Mm-hmm. And so that's what's really cool about Mount St. Helens. It's just a fantastic teaching experience for me. And so we have lots of fun doing that. And so I lead tour groups out there, and we offer the most informative educational geological trips to the mountain. We do day trips out there from the west side, east side, and south side, 3 different trips. And we teach young Earth creationism. So I'm a young Earth creationist. And people ask me, they say, what do you identify as? Are you a flood geologist? Are you a young earth creationist? Are you this? Are you that? I like to go with what my professor says. He's an unrepentant catastrophist. And I think that's my position. I take a position that the rock record is really a record of catastrophe, not slow and gradual processes over millions of years. And so that's where I'm coming from. And just a little bit of my background, just so you know, I went to university as an unbeliever, completely apart from the gospel, began wondering, what is my purpose in this universe? And it was quite a search for me. It was quite a dramatic experience for me when somebody was not ashamed to share with me the gospel, and my life changed dramatically. And I knew I needed a savior. That's why I came to Christ. I knew I needed Jesus, and he gave me life when I turned my feet in the direction of repentance, and he forgave me of my sins. And that gave me life. And it also gave me, I was open to discussing creation or evolution or old earth or young earth. I was open to that, whereas before I was not. If you would have come to me before that time and would have asked, hey, Bill, you think you might have it wrong. You see the earth really is young and there was a global flood and this kind of thing. I would have said, what planet are you from, man? I would have said, you got to be kidding me. You really believe that rot? And so it took quite a bit of convincing for me after becoming a Christian, even though I was willing to consider the scriptures. And if I hadn't met a very qualified geophysicist who helped me through this, I would not have been a young earth. I would have drifted into one or more of what I would call compromised positions, the day age or the gap theory or the literary device, any one of those things that are very, very popular today. But I think they are, what you're doing is you're stretching the text to see what it allows for. You're not letting the text speak to you. If you let the text speak to you, I don't think you come to a conclusion of an old earth. I think it's something that is pressed onto the text. And so that's the position I'm in. And my life changed pretty dramatically. And I got to go to the Institute for Creation Research, study with Steve Austin, and do a lot of cool things. I know what's involved in radioisotope dating projects. I've done that. And I'm a skeptic that you can age date the earth. I think secular models of earth history are grossly overrated. I really believe that man does not have a time machine. I think it's impossible for any geologist to claim to have measured the age of any rock on this earth. You can interpret a rock's age based on a given set of assumptions. That's one thing. But when we teach school children that scientists are able to measure the age of rocks, I know that's a lie. You cannot do such a thing. Scientists have no such ability. And so I don't care whether you're talking about isotope dating or distant starlight or erosion of canyons or what have you. I don't see evidence for an old earth. And so the position I take, and this is just what I have come to, I see nothing in science that demands an old earth, and I see nothing in scripture that allows for it. That's the position I'm coming from. And so the passage I like to go to, and I don't know if I got a few minutes to talk, just a few minutes more.
Yeah, you got about 2 minutes left.
Okay, the passage I like to go to is in 2 Peter chapter 3, which I think is the most underappreciated passage in the Bible. And Peter is warning the church in the last days. He's saying, there's going to come scoffers with this pseudo-scientific claim that you Christians talk about Jesus coming again, and yet all things continue as they were from the beginning. In other words, people are going to say what? Oh, the tides go in, the tides go out, the seasons come, the seasons go, the years roll by, the oceans, the rivers run into the sea, everything continues as it was at the beginning. And Peter warned that by that philosophy, people will reject Christ's second coming. They're going to believe in the continuity of nature, and that how dare Jesus interrupt the continuity of nature, you see. He says by that same philosophy, the people will project backwards in time and deny the flood and deny creation. Creation and the flood are mentioned in that passage. And so creation and the flood are objects where Peter warned the church, this is going to be the battleground of the last days. And I see all kinds of compromise going on today regarding creation and regarding the flood.
30 seconds.
God is mocked as creator. Everywhere you go on the university campus, God is mocked as judge. Who is God to judge any man? You see, those are apologetics issues for these days that must be taken seriously.
Right on. Well, yeah, I was thinking we were doing introductions first, but that was great. We'll just keep doing this round robin because, I think we can just roll with that. Mm-hmm. I want to give Jordan the next intro because I want him to, air out his, and then we'll wrap up because I think Dr. Miller has the most unique view here tonight. As far as like, it's not like, this or that, you know what I mean? It's not like it's a better view, but no, it is a different one than what a lot of people take. So
you can say it's better. You can admit it. That's fine.
Well, hey, I'm on your side. So, but no, I want Jordan to go first. Jordan, he's from Reasons to Doubt. I'll have him explain what that is, where you can find him. Don't forget to add all that stuff in your intro, and you'll have your 5 to 7 minutes, however long you need, Jordan.
All right. Well, like he said, I'm Jordan. I'm a nuclear and mechanical engineer. I run a podcast called Reason to Doubt with a friend of mine named Jared, who's a former theologian. And we're both skeptics and atheists. We basically try to tackle various skeptical issues, whether it's religious or non-religious. But on the topic today, if it's okay, I'm going to share my screen. I've got a little presentation that can go along with my nope, not that. Can go along with my talking. So once that's in, I'll roll right in. Awesome. Okay. So the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, not 6,000 years old. And the reason we know that is simple. We have multiple independent lines of evidence that all line up together and all point to an old Earth. So in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to try to show you some of those. So I'm a nuclear engineer, so naturally I'm going to start with the coolest thing that has ever happened, which is a naturally occurring nuclear reactor. This natural reactor was predicted in the early 20th century, but it wasn't found until the 70s at a uranium mine in Oklo, which is in Africa. They found some uranium ore that was depleted, and that means there wasn't as much fissile uranium as there should be, and people were obviously concerned because you can make bombs out of that stuff. But it turns out nobody was stealing the uranium. The ore coming out of the ground was depleted. They also found fission products there that only occur in nuclear reactors. So by the combination of that, the implication is very clear. There was a nuclear reactor there at some point in the past. And this is a conclusion that's AIG, ICR, they agree with it too. They obviously have a different interpretation. But the problem is that this reactor takes time to set up. So natural uranium is only about 0.7% enriched. That means of all the uranium, only 0.7% of it can do fission. And the fissile stuff decays faster than the rest of it. And so over time, the uranium becomes less enriched. The inverse is also true. If you go back in time, it becomes more enriched. Turns out, if you go back about 2 billion years, natural uranium in the ground is 3% enriched, which is what you need in order for fission to occur with light water. So clearly the Earth, at least that much decay has happened. At least 2 billion years worth of decay at current rates has happened. Now, for this to fit into young Earth timelines, some YECs, which is young Earth creationists, have tried to have radioactive decay go at a super fast rate in order to condense all that decay into, usually they try to put it into Noah's flood year because, it's cataclysm, things are going crazy. But if you can, the problem with that is that when radioactivity happens, when you speed it up, it also releases radiation and heat. And so if you condense 2 billion years of radiation into 1 year. You've got 2 billion years worth of heat. And I can go into exactly how much heat that is, but it's enough to vaporize the crust. So not a good time. So that's what the Earth would look like under this hypothetical. Clearly, the Earth wasn't vaporized at any point in the past. So evidently, there wasn't this accelerated decay. So we can keep going. You've probably heard of radiometric dating because it shows the Earth is billions of years old. Now, normally, this is where I'd go into the theory of radiometric dating, but I'm on time crunch, so I'm just going to go straight to the good parts, the confirmed predictions. So the Earth's plates are spreading apart over time. Scientists have dated rocks in the sea floor, and they use these dates, these successive dates, to predict the rate at which the plates were spreading apart. That's on the x-axis there on the screen. Then they use precision GPS to measure the rate, to directly look at the rate. That's on the y-axis. As you can see, it's a diagonal line because the predictions matched observations. These are two completely disconnected phenomena. There's no reason for them to match up, but they do because radiometric dating is reliable. Here's another one. This is from a 2020 paper by Cheng et al. They're looking at climate change, and this figure shows temperatures recorded in ice cores and then also in sea caves. So two very separate areas. The dating on the ice cores is done, of course, by counting the layers. The dating on the rocks in the caves was done by radiometric dating, uranium thorium dating to be specific. Again, you can see the two dating methods line up perfectly. Again, completely unrelated. There's no reason why ice layers should accumulate in just such a way that they happen to match radiometric dating unless the methods work. One more picture from our friend Cheng again. This time he's looking at temperatures inferred from stalactites, again in caves, using radiometric dating to get the ages of those, and then comparing that to insolation, which is the amount of solar exposure the Earth gets, and that's predicted from orbital mechanics. So using what we know of how the sun moves, this is the insolation we should get. I can't imagine two things that should be more disconnected, but once again, they line up. They line up because it's not accidental. The same physics is driving both. Radiometric dating is reliable. One more thing, we can go bigger than the Earth. We can look at the entire universe. Technically, evidence that the universe is old doesn't show the Earth is old, but I don't know of many creationists who go the route of young Earth, older universe, so we'll just drive on. You may not realize this, but where you're sitting right now is actually the center of the universe. Unfortunately, so is everywhere else. The universe is expanding. This was detected by a guy named Edward Hubble. The rate of that expansion can be seen by measuring how fast galaxies are moving away from us. And if you dial everything back, doing some fancy math, everything was on top of each other between 12 and 14 billion years ago. So I could keep going, just scratch the surface, but the point is this. There's no reason why ice layers should just so happen to match uranium stalactites, or why orbital mechanics would match oxygen ratios in caves, or why GPS measurements of continental drift would match predictions from radiometric dating. There's no reason that would just randomly happen. The reason they all line up is because these methods are reliable and because they work, and they're all telling us the same thing, that the Earth is old.
Right on, man. Right, and our old Earth creationist, I don't know, that's not really fair as well, Dr. Miller. How would you describe your position? I'll just let you have it in the introduction.
Yeah,
take it away.
So I don't know where I fit in all that. Sometimes
you're a mutt.
I'm a mutt. I'm a mutt of things, but I actually like to consider myself more a little bit of a bridge between those worlds. Professor Hoesch taught at a seminary that I was on for a long time, had to get one of my master's degrees from. And so it's a young Earth place, and I taught there. And so in my time with young Earth folks, I met a lot of really brilliant dudes and dudettes too, but just a lot of brilliant folks that I respect the heck out of. I think we're good scientists. I put Bill in that category. He's done tours of the Grand Canyon. He makes some great points and great arguments. And so, and then, so here's my thinking on that. I'm not a scientist either. So, I have my undergrad in engineering. I did love my thermodynamics class. That was that was my favorite physics class of all time. But I know just enough science to be dangerous, not enough to do much probably good for the world in it. If I really built a building or designed one of these days, I'd probably fall over. So I don't know that I trust my science too much anymore, but I know enough to read and make some decisions. But what I found after teaching there, and then now I'm connected with a group called Reasons to Believe, which is an old earth creation group with Hugh Ross, doing some writing for them. I'm a fellow with them. So I'd say that after the years of studying different folks, both young earth and old earth, that I would gravitate towards old earth in terms of, okay, I think there is some good science in that direction. My heart sort of goes in what Bill said direction was too, and that I think there are gaps in our science. I think a lot of times I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we talk about the Hubble constant, which isn't very constant because we're changing it. So we need to, we figure out stuff. I mean, science, and I'm not doing that to dismiss the science. I'm not saying that, science changes. We learn new things all the time. That's the point of science. You come up with a theory, has evidences, you support it, but then somebody comes up with a counter theory and we realize, hey, we need to adjust these things that we thought were once exact, but they weren't so exact. And, it's 1 or 2 billion years amongst friends, but still we don't know precisely all those things. So I hold loosely to a lot of that. Science is great at observing modern things we can are repeatable, we have in a lab we can do, but science always hates a singularity. And to a large part, history is a singularity because we can't really truly repeat it. We can't recreate it in a lab or a test tube. So I look at the science side and mostly my eyes glaze over when I get too deeply. I feel like I understand it. And then somebody says something else and I say, oh, no, I don't understand at all. So I'm just trying to show my cards on the science side. There's too many brilliant people. So I just kind of have this view as like, I think there's some good arguments there on the science side. So I turn more to my strength side would be the theology. My degrees mostly are in theology, philosophy, and ethics in those areas. And I look at the scripture and hermeneutics, and that's my primary authority as a believer, as a Christian at any rate. And having spent a bunch of years kind of really studying with young earth folks, I think the arguments for the dating that come from that are put on the text, I just don't think that I just don't think they're solid. I don't think that's the point of the text in the Old Testament. I don't think the Jews were writing these, the Table of Nations. They were writing they were writing about history, and those people and the events and the places are historical, but their purpose was not to, for somebody in the 16th century to put all the numbers together and say, now I've figured out the timeline. So I don't think their goal was a timeline. So I don't think I should make my goal a timeline when I read the text. In that sense, I agree with what Bill said. If we're trying to read into the text, I think either old earth or young earth, I think we're missing the point of the text. So I think the Bible is somewhat agnostic about the age of the earth. I don't think it really is relevant to the main thesis of the text. Not that it's unimportant. I just don't think it's the primary relevant thing that comes out of the text. So with that, so to speak, I kind of give a little bit of deference to the science side, and I'll lean towards the old earth side with the caveat that I think we have a lot of work to do and we shouldn't be as confident as we come across because science does that to us, and it humbles us a lot of times when we think we've got it all figured out, and then we realize we got to change. So with that said, I'm sort of age agnostic with sympathies to young earth people because I feel, like I said, I think there's a lot of brilliant folks out there, but I probably would at this point in my life fall within the old earth camp. I think they kind of have the more persuasive arguments on that. But I don't think any of those arguments scientifically are really connected theologically to much that has much significance. So the passage like that Bill mentioned in the New Testament, 2 Peter, I think that's a little bit of to suggest that those who are arguing for an old earth would somehow be mocking Christ or mocking the God as creator, I think is a bit of an overstatement. And to be honest, I mean, I just think that when we do that on either side, whether it's old earth people or young earth people sort of taking those positions of accusing the other of not caring about the truth of scripture, I just think it creates a battle where there doesn't have to be a battle. Because as I read that text, it's not, to read the uniformitarianism versus catastrophism into what Peter is saying is to really deform what Peter's point is. He had no he had no intent of an old earth, young earth debate in 2 Peter. He was talking about people who truly denied that God was creator, because he's talking about an eternal, Aristotelian, philosophy, of an eternal universe, uncreated, that it went on forever. That was his concern. But both young earth and old earth people would accept that God is the ultimate creator, that, God created ex nihilo. And so trying to force the opposing view into that camp is just really, is just a bad hermeneutic that I think ends up, again, putting a wedge between brothers and sisters in Christ. There doesn't have to be one on that issue. I like the debate. I think we should debate the old earth, young earth stuff, but I just don't think it's not the hill to die on. So that's kind of where I fall in that in terms of theologically and textually. So I do think God created ex nihilo, out of nothing. I think that God is the source of all material existence. I think that the science certainly lends to the idea that matter came into existence. There's a beginning, the sort of Big Bang type thing. And so we need a cause for that to happen. And, by definition, that cause would be God. So I have no problem with that. I think special creation of Adam and Eve. I think animal to human evolution is off the table, far as it's a primary belief. It's core to the Christian gospel and to the doctrine. Historical Adam being
about 30
the
seconds left.
Sole biological progenitor of all mankind. I think that's a primary doctrine, and I think as long as those two doctrines remain solid, we can have genuine Christian debate about the other issues. So I'll stop with that.
Right on. Thank you for that, Dr. Miller. Richard, do you have, before we get into actually questioning our panel, is there anything that you would like to follow up with or ask our panelists?
Not for questions, but I was just going to follow up with something Dr. Miller just said. As you guys know, I focus on radicalization. Not that radicalization in and of itself is bad, but that some people get so radicalized that they start to dehumanize other people. Not that anyone's done that here, but the steps to doing that is having some sort of moral and epistemic standards that you're like, other people have to agree with this. And if they don't agree with them, then they're flawed somewhere, either morally or epistemically or both. And that's like a natural, intuitive thing that I think you could be religious or non-religious and get into. So I appreciate Dr. Miller for saying, hey, you can go too far with this. Not that anyone's dehumanized others, but I've just seen a lot of vitriol over this, sometimes between Christians. And I think it's not so much against Christianity as it is that human nature of ours to sort of dehumanize based on moral and epistemic norms. And that's really all I had for now.
No, and I agree with you. I've seen it a lot, especially on social media, where even, Christians amongst each other are just saying some horrible things. And then to get into, the theistic versus atheistic camp, I've seen on both sides, that as well. And like I was telling actually Dr. David Farnell, who's going to be joining us on October 18th to talk about biblical inerrancy, right, is that this is one of those things that Faith Unaltered, we try to pride ourselves on, in that we can have a whole bunch of people like we do right now that disagree with each other, but at the end of the day, we can still love each other, right? And that's the point, I think, amongst all of this, to come to the truth and to do so in a loving manner. But I'll end with that. David, you got anything else you want to add before we jump into questioning?
No, nothing. I think everybody did real well. I enjoyed all the presentations. So I think we can kick off our first round of questions. And Tyler, you want to start? Yeah,
I do. So I love David had sent everybody, and I had tried to send everyone I emailed Professor Hoesch and Dr. Miller these questions. So I'm going to jump into the second one under number 2, and it's actually for Bill. So Bill, does the old earth creation model jeopardize potentially essential doctrine? Is it a slippery slope to hold to old earth creation?
Well, I think in history it's shown to be a slippery slope. And again, I don't, I'm free to be wrong too. I don't claim to have absolute understanding of science or scripture, and I don't hold it against any Christian who holds to a position differently from me, because, hey, chances are very good that I hold to lots of things that are completely unbiblical, and I'll be exposed on the day of judgment. All right. And so I don't want to, there is a place for saying to a brother and sister, and we shouldn't be so insecure that should be so horrible, to say, brother, I think you're wrong on this issue, and here's why, right? And if it gets hot over that, then it's gone too far, of course. But I think there's room for disagreement and for vigorous disagreement, and that's okay, as long as it's kept in the right frame. Yeah. So your question was, I'm sorry, I lost your question again.
No, that's fine. I can repeat it. Does the old Earth creation model jeopardize potentially essential doctrine?
Yeah, I think it does. I think that we see it at street level on the university campus. A campus ministry guy is going out and talking to people on the campus saying, hey, look, man, I believe Christ has got a good plan for your life. And then typically, or frequently, I should say, a student will reply, well, you don't really believe that stuff about a talking snake and 6 days of creation and Noah and the animals and all this. And typical reaction is to divert the issue. Let's talk about Jesus. Let's talk about this. When the gospel itself demands, in my way of thinking, first to establish that a man is accountable to his creator, number one, and that man is in a fallen condition such that he needs a creator, and then number three, Christ is the answer to that. That's the gospel. And if I'm insecure, if I do anything less than a full-throated affirmation that man is accountable to his creator, in other words, I begin hedging on the historical truth claims of Scripture. There's just way too many unbelievers out there who are familiar enough with Scripture to say, well, if that's what you think of your holy book, man, I don't want any part of your Jesus. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's how I think it hits at street level. And I see that as very tragic. And yeah. So is it an essential doctrine? I don't think it's essential. Is it important? Absolutely, it's important. That's my answer.
Okay, fair enough. And so, and just to kind of add, to what you're saying, and then I want Dr. Miller's response. But I think, as a young Earth creationist, so if you all haven't noticed yet, I've got my old Earth creationist. Whoops, on that side, I've got my YECs right here in the middle, and then I've got our atheist friends to the right of me, left on the screen, or however, maybe I said that backwards. But regardless, so I do want to follow that up, and then I want to get Dr. Miller's view. But I think that in one sense, the old Earth creation model does hit on potentially essential doctrine, and I don't think it's potential. I think it is essential doctrine, right? And what I'm thinking of, and I understand the rebuttal, I guess, to this accusation, but whenever it comes to death, right, I think Romans 5 is an absolute key verse in linking death and sin together. And like I said, I know the old Earth creation answer to this, that it's only talking about man's sin, about sin affecting humankind, and that animals can still have death, before that. But that's not what the text says, right? That the text is speaking about death. And so I think it does hit on that. I think that is one of those essential doctrines that not necessarily jeopardizes, maybe, but it does touch on, right? And so hearing, we've had Dr. Hugh Ross on, and Dr. Miller, I think you agreed with Dr. Ross's position on this, that it is talking about humankind. So that's kind of my follow-up, being a young Earth creationist, and that we've talked with Dane, Von Ace about. But Dr. Miller, what's your response to what Professor Hoesch said? And then my
yeah. So I mean, just ask you real quick, and I'll jump to Bill's stuff next. I'm sorry, I can call you Professor Hoesch, Bill, if that matters, but we're friends from back in the day, so I'm so used to calling you Bill. So I hope that doesn't. I'm not diminishing in any way his credentials. I think Bill's a great guy. So I'm just letting the people out there know that I'm not Bill can call me Joe. He can do whatever he wants, but that,
You're good, Joe.
I love Bill, so I'm just calling him Bill. So let me do with the Romans one first. So, as I read Romans 12, and again, I don't think I'd frame it as an old earth, young earth. I've never, my whole life, even before I would even understand that in my college days, would have never even known that. When I was trying to defend my faith on a campus at Penn State University, I couldn't have told you a Baptist from a Methodist or a young earth from an old earth person. I just knew that there's a lot of people that were opposed to my faith. And as I used to lead studies and do groups on there, I read something from Romans 5, verse 15. Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man and death through sin, so death spread to all men because all sinned. So I do think the context is about human sin, and there are certainly repercussions to the rest of creation, but I don't see that as a old earth, young earth thing. I think hermeneutically it's talking about why humans need a savior, unless you want to argue that animals have sin that requires Jesus to die for their sins. I just don't see that in the text. So so I think I want to always be cautious not to put our contemporary debates back into the text where it wasn't the context for that, because there'd have been no understanding of old earth versus young earth in that time. So they couldn't have been making those distinctions. So that's what I'd say about the Romans 5 thing. As to Bill stuff, it's interesting. When I sort of interviewed to become a visiting scholar with Reasons to Believe, and now as a fellow, I'm writing a book for them that'll come out next year, along with one of Hugh Ross's books. Alongside of that, it's basically understanding and the sort of a defense of how we should interpret Genesis against those who had turned it into some sort of mythology or myth. And I think there is a historical reality to that we cannot compromise on. So in that sense, I'm with Bill for that, for sure. But I went through that process. I told him, I said, look, one of the things that I have to offer a group like Reasons to Believe is that I want to be a bridge between young earth folks and old earth folks, because I think there's just too many decent people. And I've seen both sides do it, honestly. I've seen young earth folks, sort of behind closed doors disparage old earth people as, virtually the Antichrist, sending us all to hell, and, whatever. And old earth folks behind closed doors will, let young earth creation is just the easy whipping boy of everybody, because nobody likes them. So if I want to be respected in the world, I just throw a few aspersions at young earth creationists, dismiss them and out of hand, and then, hey, maybe I'll win some allies. But so for me, I that's my approach, even on both sides. So I would agree with Bill that I think we don't want to compromise the integrity of the text. But if the beginning point is young earth creationism represents the text, and any compromise of young earth creationism is compromise, that's not the question. The question is, what does the text say? And then where do I stand on the text? So, we can't assume that the default truth is young earth creationism, and therefore any, counter to young earth creationism is a compromise of the text. That's not the question at hand. The question is, what does the text say? So again, I would just go back to my biblical agnosticism when it comes to the age of the earth. I just don't think the Old Testament cares about the age. I think it cares about historicity. And in that point, I agree with Bill. I think there was a historical Adam and Eve. I think that they are the first two biological ancestors of every living human being. Those that would compromise that with a variety of theories that go on today, I think they do make some challenges, especially to human sacredness and the Imago Dei, the image of God, that is necessary for not dehumanizing others. I think they make compromise to the very gospel itself if we reject them as the first two people, because that is the point of the text. What we do with the age after that, I think we can have some squishy room with, but not those core things. So that's my simple response. Hopefully it's short enough.
Yeah, right on. Well, thank you for that follow-up, Dr. Miller. And I want to get the atheist guest in here as well. I want to get Jordan's take on this. Jordan, you see this discussion going on, and even how Christians disagree with each other. But as a naturalist and as an atheist in the science community, you guys actually disagree with each other about this type of stuff, but you guys are also in agreement when it comes to a good amount of things too. So if you just want to give your perspective to what these guys are saying and stuff like that, I'd love to hear it.
Well, I don't have a lot to say in terms of like digging into whether the Bible says A versus B. You know, I used to be a believer, but I'll leave that between believers, and particularly Dr. Miller's far more educated on that than I am. I would say the slippery slope thing kind of triggered or caught my ear, just because I think that there is a slippery slope coming in here, but I think it's on the young earth creationism side. And I say this as someone who used to be a young earth creationist. I think that given the, and I'm sure Bill's going to disagree with me, and that's fine, given the overwhelming evidence towards an old earth, there's a reason why virtually every scientist on the planet agrees with this, like with other than a very small percentage, because the evidence is there. And so by staking that as your line in the sand, like thou shalt not cross this line, I think it really does damage to potential Christians who, like, if they're brought up thinking that this is a line they can't cross, and if they cross this line, the Bible's wrong, and then they find out it's wrong. Like, some people go on to a different kind of Christian faith, but I think that catapults some people away from the faith entirely. And so it seems like a losing proposition. Just thinking pragmatically as a person, if you wanted to like spread the gospel as far as possible, I don't think that's a winning proposition.
Right on. Richard, you got anything to add to the table there as you listen to everybody's response?
No, I was just typing both of you in the chat that I have a question for both professors, and then another question for Jordan, but I can hold on to that for later. Or if it's good for now, it aligns up with what they're talking about now.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
if it lines up, go for it.
Okay, then this is my question both for Dr. Miller and for Professor Hoesch. And forgive my kids and dogs in the background. You'll hear a lot of noises as I'm asking the question. Hopefully that just adds some wholesomeness to it. But the question is, as an atheist, I'm often confronted with, what if God appeared and showed you this? Would you believe? And I say yes. So like my atheist version of that is, what if aliens came and said, okay, we were watching when your solar system was about to start, and we put sub-quantum cameras throughout your solar system. So we actually have video. We actually have 5 billion year video of everything that happened in your solar system and on your planet at every spot in your planet. And they're able to show you this video of a 5 billion year scientific process, not only of the age of the earth, but also of life going from single cells eventually up to humans. And they showed you that happening. And keep in mind, there's theistic evolutionists who are completely okay if that were to happen. But for these two doctors, I think both of them have said that would confront with what they think. So if you were to see something like that, would it affect your faith, or would you kind of move over to the theistic evolution side?
I can go first. That's fine. Well, sure. I mean, yeah, our faith is rooted in both the reason and the hope and the revelation of Scripture. So, that's similar to a question that has been around a little bit longer. Like when people said, "Hey, if we can," I mean, Paul himself said, "Look, if you can show that Christ has not raised from the dead, then Christians are to be pitied among all people. They're because their faith is in vain." So I think, ultimately, if there could be such a alien when they do show up, and if they come to your house, you let me know, because I want to come see the video. But if there can be proof, an actual proof that God did not do what He said He did, created through the power of His word ex nihilo, and that some alien said, "Hey, we can have proof that we did it," and they showed up and did it. I'd have to rethink things, because my faith is not the absence of reason. My faith is grounded in reason and the hope of Christ and of the revelation and trustworthiness of the Scripture. So if that could be undermined, if the Scriptures could be proven false in some meaningful way, assuming that evidence proved it false in some meaningful way, then I would change something. Something would change for sure. I don't know what, depending on what they showed me, but something would change.
Here's what I'd like to know. I'd like to know, is there a single argument for an ancient earth that does not rely on presuming present conditions into the past, where you have no business presuming, but you do it anyway? That's what I want to know, because I'm interested in the truth. If I saw such a video like that, I'd want to know about it, because if I'm living in a deceptive in a world of deception, I want somebody to rescue me from it. I don't want that, you see. But I don't see that there's a huge titanic difference between observable, repeatable science and this game of projecting present rates into the past and spinning a story about the past that has no way to confirm or verify. It's just a story. That's all it is. And I think it's true of radioisotope dating. It's true of all these things. There's just a lot of picking and choosing. You can pick and choose a lot of radioisotope dates that agree with your model, but you have to reject, or you have to bury your head in the sand regarding an awful lot of contradictory dates. There's huge numbers of contradictions. Am I just to ignore those as a scientist?
Well, that's fine. I guess I was just asking what you would do if you saw that type of evidence, and you both said that you would go with that evidence. And then I have one more question for Jordan, but I can wait till another time. I don't know what's good for the.
You can ask your video, or you can ask your question to Jordan Richard, but I would just say that those videos are deep fakes, and so we can just go go ahead.
And I'm being a zealot for believing them.
Yeah.
So Jordan, I was just going to say there's theist scientists out there who agree with every bit of what you said, and they just say, praise Jesus because he made that happen. Any problems with them, or could you go along with that?
I mean, I disagree. We disagree on whether or not naturalism is true, whether or not God exists. But I'm not sure what you mean by have a problem with them.
So they agree with every bit of your science. They just say there's a reason why it happened and that God was the reason.
Okay. I respectfully disagree. We can have a dialogue over whether or not we should attribute God for the things that we see. But I mean, if you're trying to get it are they good scientists? Can they do good work? Of course they can. A lot of my good friends are Christians and do amazing work. So I don't see any kind of fundamental problem with that. I just disagree with them.
Okay. All right. That's all I have, David and Tyler.
All right, Tyler, back to you, bud.
No, I asked my question. Go ahead.
Did
bud.
you?
Your turn.
Right on. I mean, we got Jordan next year up. I was going to say, at some point you've said that I think it was one of the debates you were in with Tim and Travis, and you and Reason Stood Out said that you have said that there's no need to insert a creator into a natural framework concerning the beginning of the universe and Earth. Could you elaborate more on that? I think you guys were using the Eminem example, at that point, you and Jared.
Yeah,
you taking him in. You know what I'm talking about?
I think the Eminem.
I want you to get into that because I think that could be a good thing that you could elaborate on
I can't speak to the M&Ms because I think that was Jared's picture.
You're not talking about the rapper though, right? I didn't see the show, so.
No, not the rapper,
okay.
Just the M&Ms themselves.
I was thinking somehow Eminem was proof that God didn't exist, and I was, I've heard his music's not that bad, but
You're gonna say the rapper or the candy?
Yeah,
I would say both are proof that God does exist.
Yeah, I'd say Eminem's proof God exists. Come on, how else would we get that?
So the reason that I said something along with that, we all agree that we live in a universe that follows predictable laws, at least most of the time. And so most of the things that happen are natural as opposed to supernatural. There may be a supernatural layer on top of it, but if I drop a ball and it hits the ground, it's gravity. It's not, that's something else. So because of this, if we're trying to explain some new phenomena, it's sensible to start by looking for natural explanations, since that's what usually happens, right? And I don't think we've exhausted these natural explanations when it comes to cosmological beginnings. We have a wide variety of plausible models for how the universe may begin that are consistent with our current understanding of physics. Now, it's going to take a long time before we have a sufficient understanding of physics to falsify them. It's very likely that the correct answer isn't one of the ones we currently have now. But it's easy to forget that just less than a century ago, scientists didn't know that there was more than one galaxy. That's how much of an infancy this science is in. General relativity and quantum mechanics, which are the fields that are both most relevant to this question, are each less than a century old, and they don't play well together. So we can't make firm statements about what happened at the beginning of the universe until we find a theory of quantum gravity, probably. And so for these reasons, I think it's just premature to throw our hands up and say, science can't explain this. There be monsters here, and just presume that a god did it.
Right on. I'm going to let Bill follow up with that.
Yeah. Okay.
If you want to give your
I
thoughts on that.
Yeah. I just I have a lot of thoughts going at one time, but I can say this: that one of the things I just wanted to say was, it was the young Earth position among Christians was the mainstream belief for 1,800 years of church history. Am I to believe that in the last 300 years that we should just junk that those people were all fools for holding to a historical model that included chronology of the age of the Earth and so on, and that people like Lyell and people like Charles Darwin and people like Benoit de Maillet and Lamarck and other people like that they have the truth, and that they're going to bring about this new enlightened view of the universe that does away with God as creator. Is that really where we're at today? That's what I want to know, because I don't see it. I think it's awfully inflated and awfully overrated to confuse this Enlightenment game of trying to presume we know a story of Earth history when we really don't, and settling on the whatever model gives us the oldest age, or what have you. I just don't think it's good science. And so I hear people talk, even Dr. Miller is using the word, I tend to go with science. Well, what science do you go with, man? Is there something in science that demands an ancient Earth? That's what I want to know. Does it really demand it? Or is it speculation? Are you projecting present conditions in the past? Even Jordan, you just said a proposed model. Well, that's exactly right. It's proposed. And you can't really get beyond that. You're never going to get beyond proposed. You're never going to get beyond the geologists that I talk to. They say, well, come on, Bill, it's the best guess we've got. Why don't you go with it? I got no problem calling it guesswork when they tell me the age of the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. That's okay. But when they tell me they've measured the Earth's age at 4.5 billion, that is just not true. You cannot measure the age of the Earth. You cannot measure the age of any rock. You can interpret it, and your interpretation is only as good as the assumptions that go into that method. You can't get there.
So, a couple things. If I had been living 1,000 years ago, I'd probably have been, and assuming that we're following I'd be very old now. And if we're following my ancestors from Europe and not the ones from India, I'd probably be a Christian. And so I'd probably have accepted your story. Like, it's fine. Like, were they fools to believe that back then? No. Does that mean they're right? No. I mean, if you're asking me if I think all of them were wrong, yeah, I think they were all wrong. I mean,
I'm not saying they're all right, but it was a consensus, and they were intelligent people, and they were the founders of science: Isaac Newton, Robert Boyle, Johann Kepler, Pascal, Pasteur, Maxwell Faraday. These are scientists that believed in a young Earth.
Newton also believed in alchemy. That doesn't mean I'm an alchemist.
Right.
Like,
well, I'm not trying to say that proves anything. But I am saying there is a consensus there, and the consensus has got some weight to it. It doesn't prove anything.
There was a consensus hundreds of years ago. That consensus holds no weight today. Well, there's no reason why we should accept
because of Charles Lyell and Charles Darwin and people like that formulated this grand Enlightenment program to explain all of origins without ever appealing to God. That's become the game of modern science, or at least origin science, is to spin a story about the past that it does not involve God. Isn't that true?
No, I don't think that's the motivation. I'm sure there are scientists who have that motivation. There's a lot of scientists. So you pick a motivation, somebody's got it, right? But I know several of my good friends are Christians, and they're scientists, and they aren't advancing their field of science with the goal of excluding God. That's obviously not. They believe in God. They go to church every week. Like they are believing, practicing devout Christians, and yet they accept the evidence that's before them of a universe that's about 14 billion years old and an Earth that's about 4.5 billion years old. So like, you just have to follow the evidence where it leads.
Yeah,
Jordan,
I
if
do want to
real quick.
Yeah,
but it's not evidence.
Yeah, well, I want to get Dr. Miller's response, and then I'll hand it to Tyler so he can move on to the next part, because I think we're in a phase now where the conversation is going, and I want you guys to kind of just interact with each other, and then you guys can ask your questions to each other. But Dr. Miller, if you want to go first and just respond.
Yeah, sure. So Jordan, to your point, can I just ask you a real short question? Because I just want to have clarity on your position.
Sure.
So the label, I guess, on your thing there is atheist. So is that, are you atheist or agnostic, or are you saying yes, without doubt, God does not exist? Or are you more of, we just don't know, and so I just don't have a way of knowing? I'm just trying to figure out what your actual position that is.
Well, I wouldn't say without doubt. There's not very much that I know without doubt. But when I say I'm an atheist, I mean I believe that there are no gods.
Okay. So do you think, and I'm just to make sure, because I'm trying to respond to what you said, but I want to make sure I'm having that clarity again. So are you saying that science led you to exclude belief in God, or are those two separate things? Like, your exploration of science led you to say there cannot be a God, or you came to know God, and then, where does that connection?
I understand what you're asking. I don't think that like it's logic. Well, I wouldn't say it's logically impossible in a global sense that no God could exist, right? So I personally don't believe in a God, and I can go into justifications for that. In terms of like science and how it relates to God, I don't think that God is a necessary explanation for the things that we observe. And so far as that goes, that helped persuade me that there was no God. I don't think like I could run a test in a lab that would definitively prove no God exists. I don't think that's
okay. Possible. Fair enough. Thank you. That's helpful clarification. No. So I guess here's my just broad thought to your to what you said, and to the question at large. So I was talking to my students the other day. We were actually just doing this yesterday in class. So, I teach at Grand Canyon University. This fall, I've got almost 300 students, and I have students all over the map. Pantheists, that's their position. Let's say they're pantheist or atheist or agnostic. Wiccans, some are Christians, some young earth, some older, some just, I'm a Christian because I grew up in a church, and so I've got the whole spectrum across that. And I showed them a clip because we just finished a section on origins in the class I have, and I show a scene from Dumb and Dumber. Have you guys all seen that show? It's a great movie. And there's a scene where Lloyd, who is dumb, his friend is dumber, but Lloyd followed this woman across the country who's way out of his league, and he loves her, and her name is Mary, and he's trying to because he's convinced she's going to love him. He's like, Mary, tell me, what are my chances? She's like, I don't know. He's like, she's like 1 in 100. She's like, no. And oh my gosh. He's like, well, do I have any chance? She's like, well, more like 1 in a million. He takes this big dramatic pause, and he says, so you're telling me I got a chance? And he's like, it's not that, he's not very bright, so he doesn't understand. That made it worse, Lloyd. That's not good. I kind of feel that way about naturalism, especially in the Darwinian sense, Darwinian naturalism. In Darwin's day, if you read Darwin's stuff, he would say, look, he did come with an agenda. He wanted a purely naturalistic way to explain origins that did not entail a God. But throughout his book, he makes things. It's supposed that, or I propose that, it's possible that, it might be that. And he conceded throughout that there was a lack of evidence for many of the things he wanted to, in terms of taking the observation of small, minute changes within domestic breeded animals to extrapolate that backwards. He said, but hey, if you can prove, he sort of made this gambit. I call it Lloyd's gambit in the Dumb and Dumber. Lloyd was his name, and he's like, you're saying I got a chance. So that's Lloyd's gambit. I think Darwin made the same gambit. He's saying, there's all these gaps, but someday, he said, science will fill in these gaps, and I know that it will do it. I just trust that science will do it, because we have to have this natural explanation. And now here we are 150 years later, and a lot of those gaps are still there. Matter of fact, I think, especially in the world of biology, I think those gaps are even bigger than they were for Darwin, because he had no concept of DNA and the structures and the predictive nature of what Darwinian natural selection would have told us with, excessive amounts of, junk DNA, those sorts of things. We realize it's not junk DNA. Lamarck actually ends up winning more of that with especially epigenetics and horizontal gene transfer. We see Darwin was just missed a lot of what actually makes us in the biological sense. So I think, in Darwin's day, he had one in a million chance, 1 in 100 chance of being right. And now the chance is 1 in a million, but we still have scientists saying, so you're telling me there's a chance. I think we're making that gambit today. And it ends up being what I would say is more of a science of the gaps argument. Well, I don't have the evidence in the science, but I know someday we will. Look how much we learned in the past. We're guaranteed to learn this in the future. Science will fill in what I don't know. So I think that we're philosophically what the atheist would generally say is the Christian failing of appeals to God. I think we fail in the science world because we're appealing to science we don't have about evidences that don't exist, saying, but I know someday they will, therefore it must be true. So that's kind of my take on it.
I disagree. I don't want to jump on those.
All right.
Richard, if you want to go ahead with your follow-up, and then I will ask my question.
Okay, I'll try to do this in 60 to 90 seconds. I just want to show 2 books that I grabbed out of my bookshelf. This one called The Knowledge Machine from Michael Strevens, and then this one, Return of the God Hypothesis from Stephen Meyer. So one theist and one atheist. And they both talk about, of course, Dr. Meyer talks about a lot more, but they both talk about the original scientists, the original people who said, hey, we need a mandate for demonstration. We've got to actually show it to each other because we're all so caught up in our narratives. And a lot of those guys were theists. A lot of the original scientists were theists, trying to discover what they saw as qualities of God. That's not to say that a lot of scientists now have to be theists and see it that way. But at the time, that was really an inspiration for a lot of theists, was saying, okay, we have these contradictory narratives, so now we're going to have to just be absolutely zealous about demonstrations. And unless you can show me, then we're just going to call it a narrative. So I wanted to push back a little bit on this idea that that Darwin was necessarily against the idea of theists. I've read reports that he was probably open to something like that. He was just talking about evolution. And then a lot of the scientists who were convinced by his work were theists. They just changed their position on the age of the earth. But a lot of those were scientists who were, looking at rocks and animals and fossils. And so Darwin's book was kind of enlightening to them, but nobody changed their position on God based on that. And then I just want to say that over the years of science, since we've had science, it's true that we get gap after gap because every answer creates more gaps and more questions. And a lot of fine-tuning theists just take the science for what it is and say, okay, this is just more evidence. Some theists push back on the science and say, nope, the scientists are secular and they're pushing their own, no one's saying that here. But a lot of scientists, a lot of Christians will say the scientists are just pushing their secular religion on us. But some other scientists will say, no, that's all correct, and to God be the glory for this amazing thing we've just discovered. So I just want to point out there's that approach too, whether you're a scientist or not, or religious or not. If the science is demonstrating something, you can't accept it and still believe in God.
Right on. Thank you for that, Richard. Okay, so I have got a question. It's about a statement that Bill has actually made a couple of times tonight, and I don't think I've heard Dr. Miller or Jordan, you guys have interacted with it. So let me just go ahead and put this out there, and then we'll start with Dr. Miller first, and then Jordan, I'll follow up with you. But Bill, and correct me if I we lost, I think we lost Dr. Miller. I had a question.
With me, then.
Yeah, we will. But Dr. Miller, or Professor Hoesch, correct me if I word this wrong, but you've said a couple of times tonight that you cannot measure like rocks. You can't get age from rocks. You can not presuppose it, but you can guess at it, but there's no methods that allow you to actually measure these things and get an age. Is that a fair way to say it?
Right. You can measure the isotope content of the rock, but you're not measuring the age when you do that.
Okay. So since Dr. Miller, you're back now, thank you.
Yes. The answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
Okay. Whatever you asked me, I didn't hear, but I'm sure it's yes.
Okay. So I had said, fair enough. So let me reset it. Bill's made the assertion a couple of times tonight that you cannot measure rocks. You cannot get an age from them, right? My question to you and Jordan, do you guys find that statement a fair statement, or are there can you measure rocks? Is that not true?
Yeah. So this is where, again, it's out of my field of expertise in terms of, I mean, I knew enough to build buildings and do some design and architecture and environmental systems and lighting design. I mean, I've read stuff, so I'm not like dumb on these things, but here's what my takeaway from that is. I think there's something to the claim in the sense that one, there's some assumptions that have to go in for that what we observe today in rates of decay are true billions of years ago, when we don't know for sure. At least that's, again, as a non-scientist measuring those things, it seems to make sense to me that, like, okay, we couldn't observe it billions of years ago, so we're projecting current observations into the past to make those dating assumptions. So that's the first thing that sticks in me as a challenge. I'm not smart enough right now to know the right answer to that, but I do think the challenge was worth answering, at least for as a layman in that sense. I'm not a scientist. I'm just a lay guy in that field. Sure. And I think the other aspect to that, to me, is that we do see dates change even in science. So, which is fine. I mean, we can go from 14 to 16 to 12 billion, and we can lose billions with the change of a single constant. Or the Hubble constant has changed recently, and so we're not sure about all those sorts of things. So I don't know. That's why I end up being a little bit more agnostic. Sure. I'm not atheist. I don't doubt science, but I'm agnostic about science in those ancient things. And maybe that's just because I don't know enough of it, because that's not my field of study. But I do think that those sort of things, when they're set out, the arguments that the young earth folks put out, I don't feel like I've had satisfactory answers. I still think the preponderance of the evidence, in my mind, I don't have a problem with old Earth or the ages per se, but I do think there's challenges to it scientifically. That's why, again, for me, my big thing is I just don't think either one, young or old, ties to any core biblical theology, any primary theology that really in a salvific sense. But it's still an important debate. So,
sure, Jordan, same question.
Okay, so I'm going to mostly stick to radiation and stuff because I'm a nuclear engineer. It's what I know. But I think that you can be reasonably confident in the measurements we take today and projecting that into the past for a lot of reasons. First of all, there doesn't seem to be a compelling reason to suppose that the laws of physics that we observe to be constant at all times now decided to just change one day in the past. And there's also no evidence of that. I say there's no evidence because depending on the way in which it would change, that would have implications. Okay, so it's easy to just wave your hand and say, oh, well, things were different. Well, how are they different? Specifically, how are they different? What exactly changed? When it comes to radioactive decay rates, if you want to say that radioactive decay was faster in the past, and that's why, so all of this decay that we observe, it all happened in Noah's flood, which is something that I hear frequently from creationists. Well, that has implications. You can't just say that. If you're going to say that happened, then what are you doing with the excess radiation such that the potassium-40 in Noah's blood would have boiled him alive? What do you do with the excess heat that would have vaporized the Earth crust? What do you do with this? You have to build a consistent model. If you want the laws of physics to change randomly in the past, show me evidence that they did. And if you can't provide that evidence, why on earth would I believe you?
Okay, can I reply?
Yeah, Bill.
Yeah. Laws of physics, no one is proposing the laws of physics have changed. The rates in which processes have taken place may have changed, but not the laws of physics. No one is suggesting that. Are there mysteries about the heat problem? Oh, for sure. There's tons of mysteries in Earth history. That doesn't bother me too much. But am I going to assume that, that you can measure the age of rocks? No, you cannot measure rocks. You can measure its mass, measure its density, measure its temperature, all kinds of stuff. You're speculating when you tell me the age date of a rock. You're not measuring it. And there's tons of, here's what I find, just one more thing. When we look at historically active volcanoes that have gone from a liquid phase where rock turned from a liquid phase to a solid phase, crystallized into solid rock, they very frequently give inflated age dates when you apply dating methods to them. They're frequently way, way off by orders of magnitude. And there I can say, now here's radioisotope dating in areas where I can test it. I can test it against actual historical dates. Am I to trust the same dating methods when they apply it to something that happened 200 million years ago? No, I can't do that. That's crazy. You say and it's just the opposite of the Bible. The Bible, in areas where I can test it, in areas of history, archaeology, etc., it comes through with streaming colors. It comes through brilliantly. That gives me confidence that I can trust the same text in areas where I cannot have an absolute check. So I see a just complete difference between radioisotope dating and the Bible. Maybe that's just a parallel.
Bill,
yeah. Well,
so Bill, can you answer
want
specifically? So this. I'm sorry. Can I ask a question,
yeah,
Bill?
Well, yeah. I was going to let Jordan respond to that first.
Well, that's what I wanted to actually. Well,
yeah.
I wanted to see. That's what I was trying to get.
But I also just want you guys to know this is the period of time where you guys can ask each other and interact with each other.
Well, then
we're going to kind of just.
Yeah, we're doing it, man.
We're like, I just want to make
I'm picking on the guys on my side, right? I'm terrible.
So
horrible at this kind of thing.
Bill, you said that you don't think the laws of physics changed, and nobody is proposing that. Okay, so the laws of physics have not changed. Then can you clarify to me why radioactive decay rates would have changed?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know, but here's what I don't want. Here's what I'm not willing to do. I'm not willing to presume that there was this uniformity into the past like we see today. There are measurable variations in the rates of decay of isotopes. It's been measured. We know that they're capable of varying based on environmental conditions. It's minuscule. It's small. But if you're using a yardstick of 20 million years or 100 million years, that can be large.
That's a misleading statement, and here's why. Because the ones that have been measured to change are specifically electron capture decay rates, things where the shell of electrons, and I'm sorry I'm going to have to get sciencey here, but the shell of electrons interact with the nucleus. So when like potassium-40, for example, decays, it decays by capturing an electron and emitting something, okay? That specific kind of decay can be vulnerable to a slight degree to extreme environmental changes. Okay. And it makes sense because if you just like stripped the atom of all electrons, you would shut down that decay rate entirely. So of course it's vulnerable. That is somewhat under certain conditions can be vulnerable to environmental conditions. That is not analogous to how carbon-14 decays, how uranium decays, how thorium, any of those other decay rates, alpha decay, gamma decay, fission. Those are not analogous at all. And so it is misleading to say because electron capture rates have been shown under very specific conditions to change, therefore your rate alpha decay can change. That's not the same thing.
Okay. Well, I still think you're using a yardstick. You're using measured rates of radioactive decay that have been measured over the last 100 years, and you're using that as a yardstick to go back 4.5 billion. I don't think that level of extrapolation is seen in any other science except geochronology. That's extreme.
But I think
I don't mind if you speculate that way, if you find a comfortable worldview and speculating that way, but don't tell me it has anything to do with science. You're presuming things about the past. And that's exactly what Peter warned about, I think.
So here's the thing. Here's my kind of thing. So Jordan gave a very specific thing, which I'd love to hear. See, this is the kind of stuff that, having people who do have some sort of scientific bent on these issues. I hear the arguments back and forth. This is why I feel like stuck in the middle sometimes. So Jordan gave very specific things. So you talked about, Noah's blood boiling for thorium. Is that what it was?
Potassium-40.
Or potassium-40. Okay. So here, see, that is interesting to me because now we're not talking about an abstract thing. There's a very specific claim for Noah to have, for that to have been at a very specific time, less than 6,000 years ago. for the decay rates to be different now than what they were then, we could be able to figure out how different those decay rates would have to be, right? So we know that to give the false reading of 14 billion, we'd say, okay, this is how much those decay rates would have to have shifted, right, Jordan?
Yeah, that's basically it.
So we could come with a specific number of, okay, to get a false positive, we know it'd be. And so you're saying
if you want that specific number, it'd be 4.63 times 10 to the 26 joules.
Oh, see, that convinces me now. I know that. Oh, did you say joules or mini joules? I don't know.
Joules.
What kind of joules? Are those precious or no? Just so yeah. So then the young Earth person would need to say, okay, look, we know that for that rate to get that false positive, that reading would have to be what you just said there. That would mean
it was 10 to the 30 joules. I swear I won't interrupt you again. I'm very sorry.
No, that's fine.
I hate being wrong. It's 10 to the 30th joules. Sorry, go ahead.
I knew you were a liar.
Yeah.
Those darn atheists.
I'm very sorry. Please go.
But so I'm just trying to wrap my head around that point is, so what I'd want to hear as somebody, hey, I want to entertain both these sides is how would the young Earth argument in response to that very specific claim say, if the decay rates had to change that significantly and Noah's blood would have boiled, he'd be dead. How does that explain? And it has to be a very specific scientific explanation. That's what I hear you asking for, Jordan, right? Yeah, and I'd love to hear that. That's what I'm saying. I would love to hear that too. And I get Bill, your response is, well, I'm concerned about losing this or that. I get that. But is there a specific response to that claim?
No, it's a mystery. And
I'm just curious. Okay.
And I would plead humility on that one. I don't have an answer to that.
I didn't know if anybody's written on that either.
But I think that's a really good point. Back and say it's a mistake to presume things about the past, presume a continuity that is that you don't have any business going there. And
but that wouldn't be a presumption, though. That would be a testable argument. That wouldn't be. He's not in that specific case. We're not talking about the broad, big picture, older, young Earth. He's in that specific case about the decay rate of. I'm going to say it wrong again. Thorium, though. Why is that in my head?
Thorium's included. Well, thorium too. Uranium, thorium, all of it.
Uranium, thorium too. Those sort of things. So that's a very specific.
It's
claim,
because
right?
the Romulans used thorium to destroy the Senate.
I get most of my science from Star Trek and Star Wars anyway, so that's really where I get it. But no, so I mean that's a very specific claim, though, Bill. So
okay, well, Joe,
that's not a philosophical one. That's what I mean. I just would love to know how that answer.
But we're not going to settle it here.
Okay,
you got to reach that.
Okay.
You got to say
that's
that
fair.
too. But
that's fair.
Are there? Is
if
it
you don't know, you don't know. I just didn't know if somebody responded to that in the young Earth literature, or if that because I have heard about the blood boiling thing, and I've never read a response, and I'd love to hear that if somebody knew.
Is it conceivable that there was some way in which that heat was extracted from the Earth at that time? And I would say I leave that door open. I'm not going to say that I know for sure, but there's different ultra theoretical explanations that you can find in young Earth literature, but that doesn't prove anything. It's just speculation. The point is that yes, it would imply a heat problem, and I think there could be reasonable answers for that I just don't know of yet. And so, am I allowed to plead humility? Maybe, I don't know. I think that there's larger problems with the old Earth community than that one is for the young Earth community.
Larger than vaporizing the entire Earth? That's pretty large.
I think I think there's some pretty gigantic problems when you tell me that when I hear from other people that we have this complete tapestry to explain the origin of the universe, the origin of species, the origin of man, the origin of this, the origin of that, the origin of the genome, all this stuff, and each one is flimsy as all get out. And when you pick it apart, each one is flimsy, and so it's a paper. It's a house of paper.
Can I? There was something else you said earlier about the inflated ages from radiometric dating. That's something I hear about all the time. Usually, and correct me if if you're referring to something else, typically they're talking about the Mount St. Helens lava dome is one of the favorite ones to go to, where the measurements of, I have the name written down, but the measurements of a young Earth creationist, they measured it in the 80s, I think, or the 96 was the paper. And when they measured it, it came up to like 500,000 years or so. Is that the situation you're talking about?
Yeah, between 350,000 and 2.8 million.
Okay, so it sounds
7 years. Yeah.
So the actual age was like 20 years, whatever it was, 10 years. Okay, 7 years. And the age it gives is 300,000. That's a huge factor. That seems concerning, but it really shouldn't be. And here's why. It's similar to if you sprinkled a tiny bit of salt on a truck scale and then got a measurement of a pound or two. Oh, this truck scale's worthless. Why are we using this thing? Throw the whole thing out. Well, it's because you're trying to measure a couple grains of salt on it, man. You're using the wrong tool. You know, like it's just not sensitive enough for that. The amount of so let's say that there's a couple sources of error that could be. It could be for certain labs, including the one that I was tested on. It could be residual argon-40 from a previous measurement. It's a very infinitesimal amount, but when you're dealing with something that has a half-life of over 1 billion years, there's not going to be much argon-40 to measure after 7 years. It's just not going to have been that much decay. So you're asking too much of the method. Also, inherited argon, which is another known problem. Sometimes so for those who don't know, what you're measuring is potassium-40 decaying into argon-40, and you want to see how much argon-40 there is. Some amount of argon-40 can be trapped when the rock crystallizes, right? And so that would give you an erroneously large age of 300,000, however many years you got. That'd be one explanation for it. But the good news about that is there's no more extraneous argon anymore. You've trapped it now. So however much static air you have, that persists. So if it's 300,000 years worth of argon, but your measurement is a 500 million year old thing, then who cares about the 300,000 years? It just gets eaten apart in the air. But if you're trying to use this method that's useful for things that are millions of years old and use it on something that's 7 years old, then the error is just going to completely swamp your signal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. But I understand. But that's not the reply that Steve Austin got back from the scientific community. No one, we have the level of precision to measure using that for something that is 7 years in age. We do have that. And I don't think experts have contested that one. What they do claim is that there were these mysterious phenocrysts inside the lava that contained argon, that contained ancient rock from the flank of the volcano, and that it must have been there because that's the only way to throw off the measurement. That's the standard answer that came back. And the problem is they're phantoms. You cannot detect them at all. You have to imagine these so-called phenocrysts that had made of ancient rock in the magma that threw off your reading. That's the standard reply that you get, and it's appealing to Casper the Friendly Ghost. There's nothing there.
I'm extremely skeptical that there's a lab that can measure 7 years worth of potassium argon dating with perfect.
Well, then that would have been an easy way to shoot down the argument, wouldn't it? Why did they go to the whole point of appealing to phenocrysts? You see, it would have been very easy to dismiss it if that were the case. I don't think anybody's really done that in the scientific literature. I think you can do it with that precision.
Hey, Jordan.
Thank you,
Jordan. I will give you a chance to respond to that. After that, I want to ask Dr. Miller a question because he's getting ready to have to leave here soon. And so go ahead, Jordan, respond, and then I'll go ahead.
XSR again. No measurement is perfect. There are sources of error in every measurement, right? And you can't just ignore that. That's all I have to say. Go ahead.
Right on. All right, guys. Thank you. That was awesome. I love the thing I love getting a foundation for all of these different beliefs, right? But then I love hearing you guys actually interact with each other on these topics. That's one of my favorite parts. It's always been my favorite part in a debate is the cross exam, and it's always been my favorite part of an informal dialogue like we're having now is to actually engage the positions, actually engaging with one another. And you guys did awesome. So thank you so much for that. So as we're winding down, Dr. Miller, you said you got about 10 minutes left. So I want to go around the table one more time with a question. And this is my question for you, Dr. Miller. What is the best? And whenever I say that, I don't mean, one that just completely completely like baffles OEC or anything like that. I'm just saying the best argument that young Earth creationists have presented to you for their position. What do you think that would be?
Man, that's a good thing. Honestly, I think the reason why I, ended up in the old Earth side was, I think most. I'll tell you what this. When I was with Bill, and I've done a tour with the Grand Canyon with him, I think that their arguments they make for catastrophic explanation make a lot of sense. And we talk about the sedimentation layers and those sorts of things. And that's one place where one of my dreams would be to have a guy like Bill and then take somebody else and walk through the canyon with both of them and do a video, do a production on that. Bill, give me your explanation for this. And then you give me and put them side by side. Because otherwise my head hurts when I listen to, like when I try to read the books, because they talk a lot of sciencey words that I don't know. And then my head hurts. But if I can hear people like this dialoguing, that's good. So right now, I think some of the explanations for catastrophic flooding for the Grand Canyon, I find really persuasive. I think there's some really good points. As far as I can tell, they're good points. Mm-hmm. But then again, I'd love to go through the canyon with an old Earth creationist, younger. If somebody wants to fund that project, I'll be a part of it. But that's probably what I think. I think there's some strength in that.
Right on. And Richard, I know you had said that you wanted to give credit to Dr. Miller before he has to leave. So go ahead, and then David, I will hand it over to you to ask your questions.
You're right, and so this isn't a question. I just want to point out that Dr. Miller has a position on this, and then he took a moment to really think about something that could challenge not necessarily his view, but a Christian view. And so he took the time to kind of fairly assess that and defend it, and then also say where he is. It was very diplomatic and very a lot of critical thinking there. And the reason I noticed that is that's why I got in this business, not to really convert anyone to atheism, but to just see less of our human nature, of where we can get angry. Because I spend all my time in counterterrorism watching people go at each other's throats, often in their writing. So I kind of got into this business to see the opposite of that, and I saw that today. So I wanted to give you credit for that, Doctor, and that's all I had to say.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd echo the same thing. I had a similar interaction when I talked to Jeff Swearank, who's also with Reasons to Believe, and I was impressed with his skepticism, because I don't think that being a skeptic is exclusionary to being religious. I just want people to be better at asking questions. So yeah, I think those kind of interactions are fantastic.
Right on.
So before I bounce, can I just say thank you guys so much? Sorry, I do have to go, but appreciate the conversation. Good to see you again, Bill, after all this time.
Joe,
Jordan,
I'd love to talk to you some more.
Yeah, no, I hopefully will connect again. Jordan, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for your explanations. Hey, that was good. I appreciated that very much. I was glad to see you and Bill interact on those sort of things. That's helpful to me. So thank you very much. And Richard, I guess we'll connect one of these days here in AZ.
Absolutely.
And thank you guys for hosting again. I appreciate it. So thank you so much. Appreciate your show.
Absolutely. We appreciate you coming on, Dr. Miller, as always. Have a good night, sir. And just I love it whenever you come on. You're so hospitable, and I love you, man. And I've loved getting to know you over the months that we've kind of been talking. So have a good rest of your night, sir.
Anytime, reach out anytime, brother.
And you can find him at More Than Cake, right?
Yes.
Yeah, morethancake.org, not com.
Yes.
You'll find actually cake recipes. It's actually for sale if you want the domain. morethancake.org, morethancake.org.
We will link that in the description, so people can find it really easy. All right, well, guys, this has been awesome. We're gonna keep rolling, but I'm having a blast. Like I really and like I just want to echo what Dr. Miller said. I've really appreciated Jordan and Bill, your guys' interaction with each other. It's helped me out a lot as well. I can't wait to go back and review this episode and just listen to things again. It's hard for me, and I'm sure it is for those that are watching live as well, or maybe I'm just the only duck in this pond, but it's hard for me to, with so many things going on, really stay focused like 100% on what you guys are talking about. And so I always like going back, listening, slowing it down if I have to, and really taking in what you guys have to say. But just from this interaction that you and Bill just did, Jordan, I really I got a lot from that. So thank you guys for that. But I will go ahead and hand it over to David. I know you've got a couple more questions for our panel. And also, I just want to give a shout out to our audience. If you guys have a question for the two remaining panelists or for us hosts, if y'all would like to ask a question, go ahead and post it in the comments. There's a lot of banter kind of going back and forth. So if you just put @Faith Unaltered before your question, that would help me and David find it a lot easier. And so if you got a question for a panelist, like I said, go ahead and post those in the comments now. We'll do a first come, first serve fashion. That's how we'll get to them. And David, go ahead, brother. Take it away.
Yeah, guys. So, like I said, I opened this up to you guys. I want to know if you guys have any more preceding questions for each other before I jump in.
We could go back and forth a lot.
Yeah.
Probably go ahead and do your thing first.
All right. So, Jordan, what I want to know is, there is a lot of upheaval in the public arena when it comes to this question, whether what should be taught in the schools and so forth like that. And we all know that you don't like young earth creationism on that aspect, but when you see a theohistory view like
Dr. Miller.
Dr. Miller's, yeah. I'm about to say Joe. I didn't want to do that. But no, when you see his view, is that something you're comfortable with? Because he's not really rejecting the science. He's saying, hey, look, Genesis isn't given a date. It's a unique or something else type of view, right?
Comfortable with in what sense? Comfortable with it being taught in schools?
Yeah, in the public arena in schools, so forth.
No, absolutely not. Because it's religious, and it's for the same reason I wouldn't be comfortable with Islamic creationism being taught or Hindu creationism in being taught as if it were science. What I want is the best, most up-to-date scientific understanding that we have taught. I am personally in favor of teaching religion in schools. I think it's a big part of culture, so it's good for children to understand it, but taught in a comparative religion sense. Not this one's right, this one's wrong, but here's Christians and here's what they think, and here's Muslims and here's what they think, and here's Hindus and here's what they think. I think that's good information. But in terms of trying to support one religion over another, that's not the role of the public school system.
So getting multiple views, you're not against having multiple views taught in public schools as a comparative type scenario, right?
I'm fine with teaching religions in the context of a class on religions, not the teacher saying this picture of Genesis or whatever is right, but in the context of the Christian worldview, some Christians think this thing and some other Christians think this thing, and here's why they think that. Okay, cool. We discussed Christians. Next, we're going to discuss Muslims. Here's what they think and why. That's fine, because you're not endorsing anything. You're just giving them information about how people think. It's just not much dissimilar to teaching them why democracy rose, or the factors behind World War II. It's just information.
Right. Okay, David.
Yeah. I was just going to follow up. I mean, we were taught probably one aspect of the Big Bang Theory, you know what I mean, in school, versus the hundreds that are out there. And, there's this big upheaval with the James Webb right now. And they're saying, oh, it disproved the Big Bang. And you have to realize, you have to say, no, it's proven that certain models of the Big Bang were wrong, but there's so many out there that it's actually supporting. So it's, it's kind of like, from that, are you comfortable with that? And you answered it, so I'm cool with that. But I'll let you guys keep cross-examining each other. I know you guys have questions for each other, so go for it.
I think I asked the last question, so go ahead, Bill.
Oh, yeah, the question I would have is, what would be wrong in the public school if you say, okay, we've got this issue of origins we want to talk about, the origin of species, the origin of man, etc. There's only two possible explanations. Either it happened by chance or it happened by intelligence. Is that an honest way to approach the issue? I think that's the honest way to approach it. Divorce it completely from religion. It could be, when we use the word intelligence, could be the big computer chip in the sky. It could be alien intelligence, whatever. But I think in my opinion, that's the only honest way to approach the issue, and to evaluate both positions honestly. Yeah.
So first of all, I don't think evolution happened by chance per se. The theory there are chances a factor in terms of like what mutations happen, but the processes of natural selection and other processes aren't random. They're random. Not random doesn't mean directed by intelligence, but it's not random in the same sense that balls fall down, and that's not random.
Well, non-determined. So let's put it that way. Non-determined.
Okay. Sure. I would oppose that for the same I'm going to go to something that I'm sure we both disagree with, just to contrast. For the same reason, I wouldn't teach the controversy over whether or not the Earth is round, because the best science we have to date does not support that. If where there is significant like dispute in the scientific community, I don't have a problem with teaching the best, most up to date science we have. But there's just not. So it's not an open question.
So just as an example, where did the information come from on that DNA molecule? That's coded instructions. Does code ever arise by non-determined processes? Does it ever happen? Is there ever information that happens that way?
Yes.
What information can you get by?
Sure. So first of all, just stating as if it's a principle that information has to come from an intelligence, that's begging the question, because you're asserting that's the assertion you're trying to prove, right?
Well, you can say it's a hypothesis, but go ahead. Yeah.
So I would reject the premise that information necessarily comes from an intelligence. I would point to DNA and say, well, if you're calling that information, then there's no evidence that came from an intelligence. So there you go. That undermines your entire model. Like, I don't accept your premise that DNA is information in exactly the same analogous way as code I write in C# is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is information in a sense, sure. I just don't think that information requires an intelligence to come around. I mean, you've got spontaneous signaling systems arise in animals all the time. No intelligence directed. Now, I understand you think intelligence directed the DNA that is like undergirding that, but like no bee decided what signals the flowers are going to give it. That's just not how it works.
Mm-hmm. See, I'm puzzled by where did the information come from?
I don't think laws of physics.
No, it cannot, because it's a non. It cannot come from laws of physics.
That's just an assertion.
No,
I disagree.
No, anybody in intelligent design theory, anybody in information theory, secular information theory, will recognize that genetic code is it's a non-random arrangement that you cannot get from any combination of random physical laws of physics or what have you.
I do not think that's correct. I don't doubt that they're going to, if you want to call it information, we can call it information. But you're just baldly asserting that information must come from an intelligence. You're saying it must. And I say, why? And you say, because it must. That's not an argument. Like, I get you believe that. Prove it.
Can you give me another example where information does arise? Any kind of information arises.
You're the one making the assertion. Substantiate your assertion, man.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. Like,
all right.
That's the black swan fallacy.
Yeah. So we got a question that Richard wanted to throw out there. Richard.
Really, this is more of an attempt to be diplomatic than it is a question. This thing about DNA acting like a code. There's a story behind this. There were theists like a long time ago, like maybe 100 years ago, who were saying that it would be impossible to ever prove that DNA could act like a code because it's more complex than code. And so Richard Dawkins set out to tackle that, like in the 80s or 90s, and found that it was remarkably like a code. So he published something. He showed their quote, which goes way back to the 1930s, saying it would never be that because it's too complex and too amazing to be like a computer code. So maybe it was in the 60s. I don't know if they were even thinking about computers in the 30s, but it was an ancient quote. And then Richard Dawkins says, no, it's exactly like a code. And he went on and on about it. And in Richard Dawkins' mind, it was like a kill shot. And he was expecting to have Christians apologize. But what happened was that fine-tuning theists were like, we're going to use this. And now we're going to say, see, even Richard Dawkins agrees it's like code. So it is something that's remarkable. And Richard Dawkins says it acts like code. He still doesn't believe in God. He's just like, okay, this is an example of something that looks a lot like code, even though I don't believe that intelligent designer did it. So it ended up being something that fine-tuning theists, really enjoyed that he said. And my particular take, it's this amazing thing that I can see why people would think that it's code, because it works for a human life growing up, but it also works for cancer tumors. What is it about this amazing thing that acts like a code that can help a human life flourish, but it could also make a virus take over a planet, or make a baby die of cancer? It doesn't seem to be moral to me. It seems to just be this mind-boggling, and now my kids are screaming. It seems to be this mind-boggling thing that could be inspirational or could be devastating. So that makes me less likely to think that it was an intelligent designer, and it kind of puts it back in the court for me to be sort of this thing that happened after a bunch of hit and miss. There's just been a bunch of natural hit and miss until you get to this thing that really, really works really well. And it can work for cancer, or it can work for a baby.
Yeah, cancer is a defect in the genetic code. It's a mutation. That's right. What it is. Yeah.
It still works. It still works for cancer, whether it's, supposed to be there or not. It does work. And we could all get taken over by mutant spiders because they're, amazing, mind-boggling. They could get some sort of amazing, mind-boggling thing that gives them an edge up over our species, and we all just get wiped out, and they'll keep going, and the earth will still keep spinning. And it's still an amazing thing, but it makes me less likely to think that it's a designer who had us in mind.
But before you can have a defective code, you must have a code. And that's the question I was getting at.
Yeah, and I was going to give it back to you so you could ask, something, Bill, so you could, give it to you since Jordan had the last question.
No, that was Bill's question on him.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But we're on genes. So what is your take on ERVs, which for those who may not know are endogenous retroviruses? They're viruses that were inserted into our genetic code at some point in the past. So where did those come from?
Yeah, I cannot speak on that. Talk to me about stratigraphy, and I'll give you answers.
That's fair. That's fair. I am not a geologist, and I actually get a lot of heat from some people when they ask me something like that. And I'm like, well, I'm not a geologist. Yeah, that's totally fair. For those who want to look into it, what an ERV is, it's an endogenous retrovirus, and it is viral genetic code that's in our genome, and it's shared throughout all humans. And we have some ERVs that are shared with what are allegedly our closer ancestors, and the further back you go, the fewer ERVs are shared. And so that's one demonstration of common ancestry. But Bill's not a biologist, so I won't hold him.
So we'll have to get you a virologist to come on. And
well, actually,
about it.
You'd be better off getting Dr. Stan Cardinell, who is a
I'm
virologist.
getting you because you just asked about it. No, just joking.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's my question.
Yep. Okay, go ahead, Bill.
Oh, am I supposed to pose a question?
Yeah,
if you want.
I mean, I can talk about.
I got more questions if you don't have one, but I just want to give you.
I like the DNA one, but I don't have a good question to ask right now, but I'm sure I could come up with a ton if I thought about it. I never do good in these kind of formats.
Oh no, it's fine. We're just talking through the process here. Go ahead, Jordan. If you got some for him, you can think of one if you want. Bill, while he asks you another one.
So there's a lot of different flavors of young Earth creationists. I was curious, so when it comes to your specific understanding of young Earth creationism, where do you stand on things like catastrophic plate tectonics versus some other? Do you have a preferred model?
Yeah, I think something like catastrophic plate tectonics is necessary. I think is to assume that. If the Pacific plate is moving at 3 centimeters per year today, I'm not going to presume that was always the rate at which it moved. I think there could be plenty of reasons why that could be upset. And I kind of like the CPT model. I'm not going to say it's signed, sealed, delivered. This is how it happened. Thus says the Lord. I'm not that arrogant. But I will say there's some merit to that idea. And I do agree with you that there is a heat problem with that one as well, and that's real, and there's no question. But to say that it's impossible or inconceivable, that there's no way possible that could be relieved, that's where I would part.
So, when distinguishing between these various young Earth creationist models, what standard would you use? Like, what are you looking for to determine this one's more likely true versus that one's more likely true?
Yeah, the truth that I hold to is Scripture. I think that is that if you're talking about Earth history, I want to know, and I need an anchor. I'd like to know where I can anchor my view of Earth history, and there I find a secure place to put it. And to put it in speculations about what happened, a billion years ago, that's nice. You can speculate. That's fine. I don't mind that if people enjoy doing that. But I don't regard that as scientific.
Well, it seems like presumably you don't have a problem with like the works of AIG, or you work for ICR, is that right? I vaguely recall.
Well, in the past I did, yeah.
Okay. The works of ICR, their ostensible goal is to collect evidence and information about the past and to construct a model that is in line with the biblical worldview. But they're still like looking at stuff in the past, right? How come they can do it but we can't? Like, how come they're allowed to use like data from the past and look at rocks today and say, okay, well, it looks like a flood. But when I do the same thing using the laws of physics in labs today, and I say, well, no, it doesn't look like there's a flood, you're like, oh, nope, can't do that. Like, it seems like a double standard.
Well, maybe the difference is that at least the creationists I do, they freely admit that it's rank speculation. It doesn't prove my biblical model. It might lend support to it, it might not, but it doesn't prove it ultimately. The difference in the secular model is they claim that this offers an absolute proof of this is your origins. You children, you evolved from apes, and you have nothing to say. This is scientific. If you want to go over in the corner and be religious if you want to, that's okay. But this is just science, and you shouldn't be afraid of science. That your ancestor was an ape, something like that.
But if evidence can lend support to a model, that I take that to mean it makes it more likely true relative to other models, right? And so if evidence can do that, that's all the scientific models are doing too. They're taking evidence and eventually it lends support sufficient to not that it's 100% proven like math, but it's just there's so much evidence, it's got so much support that now we are very confident in it. That's all that it is. So like it seems like you're doing the same thing. It's just a difference of degree. So where's the line where we're not allowed to cross?
Yeah, when you say we're very confident of it, you're talking maybe the 99% of the scientific community who agree differently than I do.
Sorry, I meant like the royal we, the secular community, if you prefer.
Yeah, and that's okay. But has science ever advanced by a majority vote? No, it hasn't. And is it possible that science is way, way off with their whole scheme of origins today? I say absolutely it's possible. Is it possible I'm way, way off in my understanding of Scripture? No, I go to Scripture. That's where I believe. I believe there was a global flood, and I believe the earth was created recently. And I hold to that. And I say if I've got a supporting model that can support it, that's nice. But I don't think I have to commit intellectual suicide to believe in it. I don't look to science to prove my view of Scripture. Scripture stands for itself. It doesn't need my defense.
So, shoot, I had a thought and it immediately fled my mind. Proving. Okay, so sorry.
It happens, bud. It happens. We actually been going for almost 2 hours, so we're probably gonna wrap it up here soon. But I
gotta go soon. Yeah,
that's fair. So it just seems like if we've got evidence that can lend weight to models, it can increase our confidence. Here's what I was going to say. Science has been wrong in the past. The models have been overturned. Newtonian physics was supplanted by general relativity, for example. But I think there's sometimes a misconception for the way in which science is wrong. Science is the practice of being progressively less wrong over time. when a new model comes to overturn an old model, it's not like we take the old model, throw it in the bin, and never look at it again because it's worthless. Like, that's not how it works. When Newtonian physics was overturned by relativity had to make the same predictions as Newtonian physics did in the regions where those predictions were accurate. So it is a refinement. It's not a complete supplant. Newtonian physics is still good enough to get you to Mars, you know? So it's not the case that science is going this way, and now it's going to completely U-turn and go completely the other way with completely different predictions. It can't, because the reason these models worked is because they made predictions that were confirmed. So any new model would have to make the same predictions in the same regions. So I don't think it's accurate to say that, well, maybe science at some point in the future will be wrong such that all of these predictions were wrong.
Yeah, I think that science is one thing, and that speculating about the past is a very different game. I really do. I really believe those are two completely different endeavors, and how they both got to be called science, I'll never know, because they're very different games. And And I think you can refine modern day science, empirical, observable science. That's fine. And that's going to happen as we have a better understanding of truth. But when you can always point to certain consistencies that fit with an old Earth model. You can always do that if you cherry pick. But that means you have to avoid an awful lot of things that don't fit the model. There's tons of them, but you don't hear that in public because everybody is convinced that if you're going to be scientific, you have to be a naturalist. Well, that's not the way it was with Isaac Newton or Boyle or Kepler or Faraday. That wasn't the way they worked, and I don't, and you can say it's just the religion of the day for them, and they went along with the religion of the day, but that's not true. You read the writings of Newton, and you can see it was his love for God, love for Jesus that drove his love for truth. It was his love for truth that drove his science. He wouldn't, and that's why he invoked that you must have a lawgiver behind the laws of the universe. You don't get physical laws unless there's a lawgiver, man. He would invoke things like that, and I think it's perfectly valid today.
Looked like David was trying to jump in, so I don't want to step on it.
Nope. I was just going to bring it to a close, gentlemen. Jordan, if you wanted to just do a quick response to that.
Yeah, all I'd say is it seems kind of like you have a body. Somebody was some person that was alive is no longer alive. They're dead on the floor. There's like fingerprints and stuff. And the forensic scientist's like, okay, well, based on the blood spatter and everything. And then Bill comes in. It's like, no, you weren't there. You didn't see it, and you can't project into the past. Stop doing that. All you can do is speculate. It's the same thing. We're just using the observations today to make predictions. I don't know, man. That's all I had to say.
Valid historic. Forensic science must be done honestly. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Okay.
Always.
Well, guys, it's been really interesting. Richard, I know you've been quiet. Tyler, you've been way too quiet. What's going on with you, man?
No, my wife and little girl got home, and so I ran in there and seen what was going on with them. But we do have one audience question, which I'm disappointed, y'all. Like one audience question, really, but I know we're getting late. But I will. I'll go ahead and post that, and it is directed toward Bill. But JDM asks, Faith Unaltered, can he, meaning Bill, define information? And this, I guess this was going back to a conversation that you were talking about with DNA information and this, that, and the other. I had to step away, so I didn't actually hear what you said about that. But yeah, can you define information?
I'm not sure I can give you a formal definition, but I can certainly tell you that information is the stuff you can get off a radio broadcast. I can get it out of a book. My computer can decode that arbitrary arrangement of letters in a book, and I can get understanding from that. I think that the genome operates in a parallel way. Maybe not a perfect example, but it operates in a parallel way. And I think most information theorists agree that the genetic code, the code that rides on top of the DNA molecule, is information. I think most people would agree with me.
I'm gonna. I'm just going to point out there is something where Richard Dawkins talks about this, and it's on a YouTube channel called Stated Clearly, and I'm pretty sure JD is an atheist. I'm going to either probably here in the next few seconds, I'm going to jump over to my Faith Atheist channel, and I'm going to put that link in there for JD, where an atheist and Richard Dawkins talk about this definition for information, which could maybe persuade him that you're right about this.
Right on, right on. All right, guys, let's go ahead and jump into the final thoughts segment of this episode. David, unless you had something else that you wanted to quickly say. No, you don't.
Richard says he has 20 seconds of a final thought. So.
Yep. So, Richard, we'll start with you. And,
okay, I'll do my final thoughts, and then I'll run over and do that link to the thing about information. I just want to say once again, my whole thing is watching people at work and in my academics, a lot of extremists going at each other and accusing each other of not caring and not loving goodness and not caring about reason and logic, and it's usually vitriolic and usually leads to deadly results. So I really appreciate it when people aren't doing that and trying to be respectful about it. I think it's human nature to do that and to kind of dismiss evidence that doesn't go along with what you think. And then go and find evidence that goes along with what you do think. And I don't think religion or non-religion gets you out of that. I think it takes a bunch of people who don't agree with you kind of working together to get closer and closer to the truth. Obviously, the scientific method too, but I just think it's possible to stack the evidence without you being consciously aware of it. And so that's why I kind of preach intellectual humility more so than atheism. And I just appreciated seeing a lot of that happening here today.
And I agree, Richard. Like, that is exactly what I used to do. No lie, for many different topics. And so that's why I'm glad I kind of hooked up with David, kind of my counterpart in all this. I mean, there's a lot of different things that we disagree on, besides the whole old earth, young earth. And I think honestly, that keeps us both honest, right? Whenever you bring people of different, faiths, even, I mean, going outside of Christianity, which is why, Jordan, we love having you on as well. It really does challenge us, and it keeps us honest whenever we're actually talking about these things. Mm-hmm. And so that's, if it wasn't for David, I don't know if I would be doing that now or not. Just have the Calvinist Closet channel over there in the interwebs of the depths of the internet, and we'll go with that and stack it all up. But that's kind of my final thoughts for this episode, is that I really appreciate the honest keeping and the the challenges that go back and forth between young earth, old earth, and even atheistic naturalism, right? And so that's my biggest takeaway. As a young earth, you guys, Dr. Miller, if you're watching, shout out to you, and Jordan. You guys have given me a lot to think about. I think you challenged my my suppositions very nicely, right? So I've got a lot to think about, and I just appreciate that from both of you and Professor Hoesch. I think that you rebutted some of these challenges, and so it made my job a little bit easier, right, at the end of the day. And so I really appreciate all of you guys for coming on and doing this finale of our Creation and Science episode. I think we went out with a bang. And I can say this, I'm glad it's over for a while. That way we can focus on answering Jewish objections to Jesus and doing these little intermittent shows that we've got scheduled for the month of October and now even going into November. So we got a nice schedule lined up for our listeners. So be looking out for that. I'll give a little bit more details on that at the end of this. But that's my final thoughts. David, and then we'll get to
I'm gonna kick it right to Professor Hoesch.
I just want to say thanks. This is really my least favorite way of meeting different people. I'm certain I would love talking to each one of you and meeting you individually, but I appreciate the interaction, and I'm going to go on searching for truth and looking. I believe in truth. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen. Jordan?
So I mentioned this previously. I used to be a young earth creationist, and what changed my mind was evidence. And so I would encourage anybody who's in the audience who isn't, is young earth creationist, old earth, whatever you are. I'd encourage you to seek out the information. I found that I was in a big echo chamber at the time. And what really helped me was being broken out of that echo chamber. So I would encourage you to go see what the leading minds in evolutionary and biology think. What are the leading minds in cosmology think? What is the scientific consensus, and really understand it. Because the vast and overwhelming majority of people who spend their entire lives researching this topic agree that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, that we have a common ancestor with apes, etc. They could be wrong. They could certainly all be wrong, but maybe, just maybe, the reason they all agree is because they know something you don't, and so you should go try to find out what that is. Right? You have nothing to fear from the evidence. You have nothing to fear from truth. If you're right, the evidence will show you that. But if you're wrong, hopefully you want to know.
Awesome, guys. Again, thank you so much. My whole thoughts on this was, I love this discussion. I love the technical aspect as well as the questioning aspect, and even resolving some tensions that are there. But the best part is being able to come on here with challenging each other, right? Because I think mankind is at his best when he's in a mode of discovery, right? So I really think that as we explore the issues, and even if we disagree, we can work together. That's, one reason I love to have Jordan on, is because not only is he challenging, but he's also very cordial to everybody he talks to, and everybody,
and well dressed,
well dressed. There you go. And I've been with talking with Jordan for a long time, and he was an integral part of PRA, and then Richard came along, and the Faith Atheist was on my channel saying, "Hey guys," and challenging us there. And then, it turned into something like a family of disagreeers,
We're dysfunctional.
Dysfunctional. But no, it's fun, guys. And like I said, I think we're best when are searching for truth. And, this has been really great for me. And I would love to just wrap this part up after everybody leaves with Tyler, just on creation, and then what we're doing next.
Yeah.
All right. So Tyler, you want to just take us home?
Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought you. Never mind.
Yeah. We'll stay after everybody leaves.
Okay. Well, then, do you really want me to take us home?
Yeah, take us home for that part, for the actual discussion. So.
Okay. Well, like I said, guys, I really appreciate y'all coming on. I appreciate the discussion. And just the hospitality and the genuine, I think, desire to search for truth. I think that you guys are both on it, and so I really appreciate that from you. Let's go ahead, Dr. or Professor Hoesch. If people want more from you, where can they find you at on the internet or in real life?
Yeah, good. Thank you. I'm at the Mount St. Helens Creation Center, and then you can go to info@mshcreationcenter.org. info@mshcreationcenter.org. That's how you can find me.
Right on. Jordan, where can people find you if they want more from Reasons to Doubt?
Well, they can go to the Reason to Doubt YouTube channel. If you find a hip-hop band, that's not us, keep going. We're the next channel over. You can also find us on Twitter at pressx_2doubt.
Right on. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. And also, I just want to say this to our listeners real quick. We are, and you've seen me post this a couple times tonight, but we are very, very listener supported. We don't have any, man, that just kind of left my thinking. Sponsors. We don't have any sponsors or anything like that. So we are listener supported. So if you would all do us a favor, if you actually like the content, please give us a thumbs up. Share us with your family and your friends on social media and in real life. And just try to get Faith Unaltered out there. We rely on our listeners. We rely on our guests to advertise the shows that they're going to be on, as well as like I said, our listeners to share and promote the shows that they like. And so hopefully once we start actually selling merch, which seems to be like our next step, once we find a design that we like, and I think that's coming, then maybe we can use some of that some of that money to go to advertisements. But we are, like I said, we're completely dependent on you. So if you would share us, give us a thumbs up, and subscribe to our channel, we would absolutely love it. And David, I'll kick it back over to you to
all right. Well, I just want to again thank the guests for
Yeah.
being here. Thanks for coming in. Me and Tyler are just going to close out our part of the series here, but you guys are, have been really great, and I appreciate you guys being here. And look forward to us to ask you to come back on for more debates and discussions.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
Right.
Take care.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
See ya.
All right. All right. So, guys, if you want to hang around, have a good one. Bill, thank you. All right. Before we jump in. Well, never mind. He left. So, nope. He's back.
I got him.
I'm still here.
Richard, since you are our guest co-host tonight, right? So what did you think overall about the dialogue? What did you think about us wrapping up this way with our finale on creation and science?
You guys handled it well, and then I'm just really impressed with the guests. All three were good. I would say that of the three, Joe Miller has probably put in the most work in terms of looking at himself and saying, how can I not be so caught up that that I'm absolutely sure that I've done all the work and the other people haven't done the work. And that's really, really hard to do. And then if you do that, if you get to the point where you really make that a priority, then people on your own side are going to hate you. Some of them are. Some of them are going to say, man, you're not really with us. You're kind of with them. So it's hard to do. And then when you do get there, it's hard to find a group because your own group is going to think that you're weak and you're not ready to take the steps and that you're not looking at reality. So all three were really good at it. I would say Joe Miller was fantastic at it. And then I would say that both Professor Hoesch and Jordan, again, everybody was kind of equally certain, but I think both of them were just convinced that the other guy was stacking the evidence on his side and dismissing other important, pertinent information. And so they both just kind of assumed that was what was going on with the other one. And at some point, you can't watch that for too long. And I think we cut that short, and that was probably a good thing.
Right
on.
Yes, sir. So
I just want to say thanks to you, Richard. I'm just gonna, we'll let you go too, and me and Tyler will just wrap everything up and tell everybody everything that they need to hear for our next series.
Richard, before you go though, man, we've asked everybody this: where can people find you if they want more from the Faithiest Atheist?
Oh, right, yeah, right now. So I do have a Facebook page, Faithiest Atheist, or it might be the Faithiest Atheist. I am on Twitter very rarely. Mostly I'm on Facebook, and although I have a YouTube channel and that's part of your listening audience now that said a few things on that page. Mostly I'm on Facebook, and one day I'll put in some more stuff on Twitter and YouTube, one day. But right now mostly I'm on Facebook. Right
on, brother. We appreciate it. We appreciate you having you on, man. You are more than welcome anytime.
Yep.
To come
absolutely.
On
You're part of the family, man.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, man. See ya. You know what, David? I really love, this comment from JD. He says, thank you. I don't agree with you guys, but you run a good show. And check us out. Bam, he subscribed. And so, you know what? Even if y'all disagree with us in the end, subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, well, hey, look, I got word yesterday, a random text message from my brother that said that they're hanging out with one of their local theologians in the area. They live down in Austin, Texas, and he actually listens. Their local theologian listens to our show too. Nice. So I thought that was really cool. So, that's nice. Guys, I mean, we're putting the stuff out there, and we want to continue to do it. So the more likes and subscribes, the more we can put out, the more time we can devote to the content and stuff like that. So I just wanted to put that out there. But Tyler, creation. Well, what about it, man?
Look, I mean, man.
I see you have your hat on still. Look, I thought you would take it off there.
At the end of the day. No.
At the end of the day, where do you stand?
At the end of the day, and I guess this is here's where I stand. After listening to everyone, all the shows that we've done on it, all the shows, well, really just all the shows that we've done on this, man. You know, whenever you go back, the two main things that I rely on the most, right? It's not science. It is the Word of God, Scripture, and history, right? I think those who fail to look at history are doomed to repeat it. And whenever I look at Scripture and whenever I look at church history in particular, and I agree with Bill, you know, a lot of people might think this is foolish or whatever, but that's fine. Paul says in 1 Corinthians that the word of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. And so I'm expected to be called that, right? But at the end of the day, whenever I stand on the word of God and I stand through all of the stand on the shoulders of the giants that the Holy Spirit has inspired throughout church history, right? And even like going back even before that into the Judaism camp. And I see that, you know, like I asked on Facebook the other day, if you ask a Jew what year is it, they're going to say 5,700, and I think it's 82 off the top of my head. I could be wrong on that. And I had some people interact with me and say, well, that's from Noah's flood. No, that's not right. That's from creation, right? They take a literal 7-day creation week and all these other things. And so just stacking those things on top of each other. And I hear, like, trust me, I hear what you say, bro. I hear what Dr. Ross says about, and even Dr. Miller, about the text of the Bible and how you can read these things in that way. The thing that stops me just in my tracks is that no one read it that way in church history. Yes, you have your allegorical interpretations of Scripture. We can argue about that. But at the end of the day, if you took a literal interpretation of Scripture, you came away with a 7-day creation week. There's just no argument about it. And so those two things right there let me keep my hat on. But like I said, that poses a big problem with modern science. There are things that don't harmonize or don't seem to, I'll put it like that, they don't seem to harmonize modern science and the Scripture. And so whenever you're taking these literal things like that and you don't line up with what modern scientists are saying, you've got to put a question mark on that, and you've got to do the research about it. You know, if there's not an answer, man, come up with one. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about an uneducated one. I'm not talking about me going and figuring out the whole heat problem, right? I'm not a scientist. That's not my specialty. But if you are a science and you're a scientist and you're a young earth creationist, then please find that answer for us. There's still a lot of things to be discovered. And that's one of the things that I take away, you know, that I took away from this whole channel and this whole series, is that, you know, science is progressing. Science is answered. There are still things like creationists. There are things that we can't answer. There are still things that scientists can't answer, you know, and like you had said, the models of the Big Bang, all these different things that the science has. You know, I always say this. I always say, you know, science today is nothing like what it was 100 years ago. So I wonder what people 100 years in the future are going to be saying about what we have said today, right? And so it's just very interesting to me that science is progressing, and that's a good thing. I think that's a really good thing. But man, those are my thoughts on this whole topic. I don't think science has all the answers, and I don't think the Bible has all the answers, because there are certain topics, man, that the Bible just don't address. And, you know, at the end of the day, does it really touch on old earth, young earth creation? Not in the sense in which we are talking about it today. They wasn't, you know, I agree with you. They was not talking about it back in the first century and even before that, like we are today. And so I think there's a lot more discovery left on both sides of the table. And I'll just leave it at that. And I'll be interested in looking on more evidence that comes out in regards to this topic years down the road. So that's
you're saying there's a chance.
I'm saying yes, Lloyd's Gambit is my favorite.
Like,
there's
you know,
a
the
chance.
old earth, and you know, as a believer in the old earth, you know, I can tell you that I do the same. I Scripture is my final authority. I would probably disagree that that's the only way they read it. I think that's more of a majority view versus minority view type situation, and I won't go with the consensus on that. However, you know, I mean, you're right. I mean, anybody that may just read that, and depending on where they grew up and who was their mentor and so forth, they could walk away with that. And I think that was probably the majority mindset. It was a consensus among people that read those texts. But there was the minority view. It was always been out there. It might have been even more obscure. And, there might even have been views that we have not considered yet. And that's what I'm walking away with, right? That's what I'm walking. That's why I love Miller's theohistory, right? Where you're seeing some truth, but they're really giving you a theological history. It's that's not what they're really concerned about, even though some of it pops through, right? Yeah. So when I am looking at this and I'm saying this as just a believer and a student and as somebody that loves science and somebody that loves my faith, I'm looking at this and saying, you know what? There's a lot of the puzzle that hasn't been put together yet. There's a lot of pieces that I'm missing, and there's a lot of information out there, right? And as a person, I have to discover it. I have to keep up with it. It's hard at times, but yeah, I mean, I have to keep up with the groundbreaking scientific discoveries along with groundbreaking theological discoveries that have been put forth. I mean, just in the last 100 years alone, we have found crazy amount of things historically, So
and the James Webb is still new, bro.
Like, now the James Webb, and then we got the James Webb, for the science. So I mean, we're still discovering things. We're always discovering things. There's just a lot of pieces of the puzzle for me. And you know what? That puzzle might be more full for somebody like Dr. Miller or somebody else, but for me, I haven't taken the time to explore certain areas yet. So I'm on my journey and I'm continuing on that journey. So I don't think I've really changed my mind on certain things yet, but I do got to say, like from Dr. Marcus Ross's position on the geology of the sand and how it layers and stuff like that.
Grand Canyon,
he gave me some more things to consider that I'd have to look further into. And so I think there's a lot there that we just need to do more on. And, we don't have to do a series on it, but we could still have debates and stuff about it in the future.
Absolutely.
With people that want to discuss it. So we did a series now to really lay the ground out. And again, I loved all the guests that came on, and I'm looking forward to Jewish Objections to Jesus. Guys, like I said, we got this new shirt out. Let me try to show the backside.
Don't strip.
No, I'm not gonna strip. I'm trying to show the backside.
While you're doing that, just give a big shout out to Garrett Skyton. I see you in the comments, brother. What's up?
Yeah. So it's got Facebook on the back. It's got another part of the logo. So I mean, it's just really cool, man. I'm really excited that we have it. So you guys can, if you guys ever want anything, you can get in touch with me and my email, and I can order some more.
To get mine.
But I'll be sending yours out. So what is next? What is this Jewish Objections to Jesus? What is the goal? What are we doing?
Let me throw this up there for the listeners that we have left. So if you do desire any Faith Unaltered gear, contact Mr. David Russell at Dr. Russell Jr. at 81 at iCloud.com?
Yeah. Yep.
Or hit me up at faithunaltered@gmail.com. But to answer your question, brother, man, we got October. We're getting it pretty full right now. So the only things I don't have is the 2 episodes that you've got scheduled, which as soon as you tell me them, I will put them in my calendar. But for one, right now on the 7th, so the 7th at 7 p.m., we will have three of my good friends that are going to be discussing the PSA, penal substitutionary atonement. For those who have been watching Faith Unaltered for a little bit now, one of our it wasn't creation science driven at all. So we were kind of in the middle of getting this show actually put together whenever we did this, but we had Will Hess from the Church Split on to discuss theories of the atonement. And PSA was not a big one of Will's, but that's fine. I hold to multiple theories of the atonement, and I think that's one thing that I really brought out in that episode is that I don't think there is one theory of the atonement that's true. I think there are multiples, but I do hold to what we're going to be discussing on the 7th at 7 p.m. with penal substitutionary atonement. Then on the 18th, this is going to be I don't know. This is going to be close to the episode that we've actually got that Friday on the 21st. But on the 18th, David and I just confirmed yesterday with Dr. David Farnell that we'll be discussing biblical inerrancy. So Dr. Farnell has taught at the Master's Seminary. That's for those who don't know, that's Dr. John MacArthur's seminary. He's the CEO or president of that seminary right now. And we're going to have, like I said, Dr. Farnell on to discuss biblical inerrancy. You can find some of his stuff at Defending Inerrancy. Man, I can't remember if it's .com or .org. I'm questioning. I want to say it's .com, but if that don't lead you there, definitely type in .org. I'll put a description to that in the or I'll put a link to that in the description. But Dr. Farnell, biblical inerrancy, and then on the 21st of October, which David, we have got to get questions out to these guys. I promised them we'd have them to them by October the 1st. It's October the 1st, and we still ain't got them to them. But Chris Date and Dr. Tim Stratton will be on to discuss Molinism and determinism. And so we've laid the foundation. We had 3 guys on representing the determinist, the Calvinist stance, whenever it comes to just the way the world works. You know, are things determined? Are all things determined? Right? Exhaustive determinism. And then we laid the foundation with, who was it? Dr. Leighton Flowers, Eric Hernandez, and J.D. Martin on the Molinism or the non-Calvinist perspective. Now, granted, J.D. Martin is still a Calvinist in some aspects, but whenever it comes to exhaustive determinism, I don't think he really stands for it. So we had those guys on to lay the foundation for the non-Calvinist view. And now, like I said, we've got the representative from Rethinking Hell, Chris Date, the Calvinist, and Tim Stratton, Dr. Tim Stratton from Free Thinking Ministries, the Molinist, to come on, not debate. We're going to have an informal discussion just like we had tonight on the topic of determinism and Molinism. The two, I mean, from what I heard, Dr. Stratton, you know, they seem really, really close. If I'm not mistaken, Dr. Stratton said that he believes that God determines most things, just not exhaustively determines all things. And so there's a lot of harmony, you know, with both views there, and I cannot wait to flesh them out. Maybe I will actually go a little bit more on the Molinist camp than I am on the Calvinist camp. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So what do you got lined up though, bro?
Oh man, we've got another episode with Hugh Ross on aliens.
Yes.
I'm working on another one with a demonologist on you know, demons and angels.
When's the one with Dr. Ross? 28th?
That's going to be the 28th. Yes,
at 7, right?
Confirmed. Yep, the 28th.
Okay.
What other one did I get set up?
Man, if you don't know, I don't know.
I don't know off the top of my head. I got them written down, but
that's good. I
have a couple that are going on right now. Just we worked out the one with Farnell. You got that one.
Yep.
Oh man. I'm just having a brain fart right now. We've been going too long.
You're good.
But yeah, we do got some. I got one in the works as well with Travis again.
Okay.
He wants to talk about ultimate reality and so forth. And I will actually be on where I was just passed, but I was just on Dale's program talking about Molinism and soteriology. So you might want to check that out. It's pretty fun. But
offer a rebuttal to that one.
You might have to, yeah. But yeah, so like there's stuff in the works.
Right on.
I know we pretty much got October full. And again, like I said, I'd have to look more into my calendar and what I have worked out here. So, but yeah.
Right on,
I'm
brother.
Good, man.
Sounds like
that's it. I'm taking like a couple weeks off. So
you are.
I'm gonna take a week off, at least a week, because I think I can't take a full 2 because we have Dr. Farnell. So.
Well, I mean, we don't have anything scheduled for the 14th. So if you want to take the 7th and the 14th off, like. We don't have
nothing on the 14th. All right,
not yet. I'm going to get some stuff planned out.
Maybe I just have a lot of birthdays this month, so
I know
myself, and
Seems like you've had
Back to
20
back.
birthdays this year with only 4 people in your family, but hey, that's okay. No, I'm just
Yeah.
playing.
Yeah.
So,
No,
but-
like seriously, I've got my literally one of my best friends in the world, the best man at my wedding, you know, his birthday's the same as my daughter's. So
Right on.
yeah, so it's wild. So we've got that, we've got cousins and all sorts of stuff, birthdays that end up falling in October. So
Nice.
and so does mine, my daughters, my cousins. So
all
it's
of ours
just,
fall
yeah.
in July and April.
Oh, yeah.
So my daughter's birthday's in April, and then you've got my birthday in July, my wife's birthday in July, and our anniversary in July. So July's
Sweet.
pretty packed for us. But
Nice.
y'all, we are out of here. We thank you all for tuning in. And again, I can't reiterate enough, we are listener supported. And so if you like the content, please give us a like or love. If you're on Facebook, give us a little laughy face. If you disagree with it, it's fine. But the more emotions, the more, I'll put it like this, the more interaction that we get on the video in terms of likes, comments, and shares, then the more the algorithm works in our favor. And so our goal is to get up to and hit that 1,000 subscribers list. And so we need you all to do that. You know, we promote, we advertise like we're going out of style, and we need your help. And so if y'all would please share either our episodes around or share the Faith Unaltered channel. You can go to our homepage, click the 3 little dots in the upper corner, and it should say share. Get that link and post it everywhere. We're trying to get out, and like I said, hit that 1,000 subscriber goal, and then work our way up from there. We want to do this as much as the Holy Spirit will allow us to, and we want to reach as many people as the Holy Spirit will guide us to. And so we need y'all to do that. You know, that's one of the biggest things I love about the church is the fellowship that comes with it. David has said it multiple times. Our Friday night is our fellowship. So if you're on here still with us, thank you. This is our kind of ramble section whenever we fellowship with each other. And so we just appreciate y'all tuning in and having that with us. If you all ever want to come on our show and hang out with us, shoot me a message on Facebook, shoot David a message on Facebook, or email us, email me faithunaltered@gmail.com. And we would love to have you on just to have a set down. We don't even have to discuss a topic in particular. We could just have fellowship night, Friday night fellowship. That should be once a month thing or something like that.
All right, man, you're rambling.
I don't care.
Tired.
You know what? I don't care. Jump off here if you want to. I don't care.
Hey, we actually what we need to do, and we haven't thought about this, is we do need to do an open mic night.
We do.
And what would be a great open mic night than talking about ghosts and goblins and all that stuff we could do,
Yeah,
get some people on that have experiences with it and stuff like that. So
I want to get people's comments on, is ghost hunting sinful, right?
Ghost hunting
is ghost hunting sinful?
Wow. Huh,
and so drop that in the comments, yes or no, why not? But yeah, I'm done rambling. So we will see you all next time on Faith Unaltered. And don't forget, please, after this whole thing, do not forget to stay like Christ. That's our main mission as Christians, for all of us, is to be like Christ. So with that, I leave you all. Good night. God bless, and stay like Christ.